With GMF approval excludes Corvette.
$10,000 minimum for your trade towards any pre-owned in stock. Bennett Chevy will pay you $10,000 for your vehicle no matter its condition or miles. This is our very best offer of the year. No games, no gimmicks, just $10,000 minimum for your trade this month. Plus, Bennett selling new vehicles at MSRP, not 1 penny more. Stuck in a lease? We can get you out early. Every make, every model. There's absolutely no obligation and no pressure. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on.
And welcome aboard a Monday edition of the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video streaming in our YouTube channel. Search 97.3 ESPN if you want to watch the show live. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's happening? Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there, good weekend hopefully for everybody. Got your Christmas shopping hopefully getting close to be done. I did all my wrapping yesterday thanks to the Eagles getting their game postponed to Tuesday night. It was 2 straight Sundays with no Eagles. So I've got all my Christmas shopping done, all of my wrapping done. This is what happens when in week 15 of the season, there's no Eagles game. Like, that's very odd to have a week 14 bye. And then you give me another one in week 15, essentially. My gosh, here's the problem. You know, I used to be a New Year's Eve buyer. I would go out New Year's Eve, get it all done. Like, I like having deadlines. I like having pressure. You know, I love the last minute wait where you have to get it done. You know, there's no not getting it done. You have to get it done. You can't not show up with presents, so you know you're going to get it done. That's why I wait to the last minute. Well, now, you know, I bought everything. Everything's wrapped, and then, like, you're sitting there and you're like, well, you have all this time on your hands, so what do you end up doing? You just keep buying more stuff. I'm spending more money at Christmas than I've ever spent before in my life, and let me tell you, the gifts aren't getting any better. You're just getting more of crap. That's what you get. You're getting more crap because now I have all this time. And the Eagles, how many people out there because of the bye week yesterday had their wife or girlfriend be like, hey, let's go out and, do some more Christmas shopping, right? And you're trading the fact that the Eagles didn't play when they normally would on a Sunday this late in the season. You're giving in because you're like, on Tuesday night, I know I'm going to be sitting in front of I'm going to be controlling the TV on Tuesday night, which is, an oddity at this time of the season. A Tuesday night football game. 2 Monday nighters tonight. One starts at 5. We'll have it for you live on 97.3 ESPN. They all have playoff implications. Yesterday was, a good day of football. It wasn't a great day of football. You got some good games. The game we had on the radio yesterday, I was listening to that game a lot yesterday. That was the Pittsburgh, Tennessee game. And that was a good game. Then I was home for most of the 4 o'clock games yesterday. You had some action yesterday, but really, if you are looking at okay, what did yesterday mean for the Eagles? Let's kind of take a look at that because it wasn't a very helpful day if you were Philadelphia. I mean, it wasn't like a awful day for you, but it wasn't the most helpful day. In fact, there was unbelievably that upset last night. New Orleans has now swept Tampa Bay this year. Now, they're not going to win that division, but they have swept the Buccaneers, which oddly enough has New Orleans now as the 7th seed. Now, I don't think anybody was talking about New Orleans, but they are now the current number 7 seed in the NFC. So what happened yesterday? All right, here we go. This will be like, do they still have in college campuses the Cliff Notes store? We used to have the Cliff Notes store, Church Avenue. They don't have the book that give you the Cliff Notes, like the yellow book with it was like the yellow cover. There was a store called Cliff Notes. You're saying it's online now? You used to go down to the Cliff Notes store and buy the notes for your class.
When I was in high school, it was a website we went to. There was a Cliff Notes website.
No, this was a store, Cliff Notes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you went to the Cliff Notes store. Hey, I'm in Geometry 101. Give me the notes.
I would do this for plenty of papers. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
website.
You would do it for most of the classes you would do the Cliff Notes for would be like the big lecture halls. I was at West Virginia. People who went to bigger universities probably can relate. You would go into a lecture hall and be in a class with 200 people would be in this huge lecture hall with you. Nobody ever showed up. I mean, if you went to a class, you'd have 30 people sitting in there. So you went to the Cliff Notes store.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of what happened yesterday. You ready?
Sure.
Here we go. All right. The Lions beat the Cardinals. Why does that matter? Well, the Cardinals, with that loss, those idiots fell to the 4th spot. How do you lose to the Detroit Lions at this stage of the season? You're playing for the number 1 seed, for God's sakes. But this is the NFL today. The Lions beat the Cardinals yesterday. Why is that impactful? It's a very impactful game to Philadelphia. Why? Because now Dallas is the 2 seed. Dallas is the 2 seed because Tampa Bay lost last night. How do you lose at this stage of the season to New Orleans like that? It's an awful loss. Arizona and Tampa Bay in a steel cage for the worst loss of the season, those two. You can't lose that game last night if you're Tampa Bay. Not when Green Bay won earlier in the day and Arizona lost. You were right there, Tampa. That's an awful loss. That has to be up there with one of the most disappointing Tom Brady losses. He looked awful last night. I mean, there was a time in that game. I'm no Tom. I actually watched Man in the Arena this weekend because I was just I want to watch this Brady stuff. I appreciate what Brady's done. I'm no Brady hater. But my God, at one point last night, he looked old. He looked old last night. For the first time ever, I think I said, man, Brady looks old. Just last night. That's all. I've never said that last week, last year. Just last night, he had a couple throws on the outside. They just kind of came out of his arm. I knew my baseball tenure was done throwing on the mound. The ball came out of my hand like a puff of air, right? I no longer had any velocity whatsoever. The ball just came out and was like, poof. That's what Brady looked like last night on some of his throws. The ball just looked like puff. That's an awful loss. So what happened last night? Arizona losing to Detroit. That means Philadelphia, the Cowboys now have a chance for the number 1 seed. Think about that. This is a team, the Cowboys, that 2 weeks ago people were like, they don't look the same. They don't look this. They don't like that. Look, they're a game out for number 1 now, which means that week 18 matchup between Philly and Dallas now could be playing for the number 1 seed. So that's why that game was impactful. Detroit beating Arizona. Now, Arizona and Detroit play what, next week or the week after, I think? Yeah, because Dallas plays Washington Sunday night coming up. And then they play Arizona. So that's why that game was impactful. Cowboys beat the Giants yesterday. Cowboys looked dreadful yesterday, to be honest with you. The Giants look worse. That's all. Dallas looked dreadful. The Giants look worse. Prescott, not impressive yesterday. I don't know. That game was blah. But it mattered because Dallas won. Now it moves them a game out of the number 1 seed. So hats off to the Cowboys. They did what they needed to do. I don't care if it looks aesthetically pleasing or not. That's not what we're in the business for. W's are. The 49ers beat the Falcons, so that pretty much puts San Francisco in as a wild card team. It looks like San Francisco is going to be the 6. I mean, yeah, they could slip up. They could fall to 7, but I don't think they're going to fall out. They would pretty much have to lose out, I think, to get out of the playoffs at this point. But Atlanta losing falls to 6-8. They're in a really tough spot now to make the playoffs. So the loss yesterday, I would say it helped Philadelphia a little bit because it kind of distanced the Falcons and it just put another team kind of out of it. And the Eagles, though, already have the tiebreaker over the Falcons. So that game didn't really hurt or help. I mean, if you wanted to bring it, I guess it would hurt more because you could have had San Francisco fall to 7-7. And so that's why you wanted the Falcons to win that game yesterday. So it did hurt more than it helped. And then the game last night, the Saints beat Tampa Bay, and that hurt Philadelphia. I don't want to say it crushed Philadelphia. It just kind of, you fell and got a little strawberry on your knee. Why? The Saints are now the 7 seed. If Philly wins tomorrow, now it will be interesting because if Minnesota wins tonight, Minnesota is the regular Monday night game. They play the Bears tonight. If Minnesota wins tonight, they will be the number 7 seed. So the Saints are the number 7 seed now, today, but by 11:30 tonight, if Minnesota wins, they will become the 7th seed. Now, the question would be, if Philadelphia wins tomorrow, if there's a 3-team tie between Minnesota, New Orleans, and Philly, who wins that tiebreaker? And I would think New Orleans somehow gets that, maybe. They have the best strength of victory. They have beaten Tampa Bay twice. But Philadelphia has beaten New Orleans head-to-head. So the question is, how does the 3-team tiebreaker, all right, this is the mission if you choose to accept it. How does the 3-team tiebreaker get broken for the wild card? And then how does that all kind of impact those 3 teams? Now, if Washington wins tonight, what does it mean for them? Because they have the tiebreaker over Minnesota, but do they have the tiebreaker over New Orleans? Boom. You got all that? Got it, get it, good. All right. So we'll try to figure that out through the course of the show today. Over on the AFC side, real quick, because there was some wonky games that had to do with the playoff chase. Saturday, the Colts beat the Patriots. Why does that matter? 1, Carson Wentz hit the 75% threshold. Now, there is a chance if Wentz gets hurt in the middle of this week and doesn't play the rest of the year that he could fall back under 75%, but that's very unlikely. He is over the 75% right now, and that means the Eagles on Saturday have gotten the Indianapolis Colts first-round draft choice. So think about that. Howie Roseman made the trade Carson Wentz to Indianapolis for a 2021 third-round pick and a conditional second-round pick in 2022, which is this coming draft, which could turn into a first-round pick if Carson Wentz plays 75% of the snaps, or if Indianapolis makes the playoffs and Wentz plays in 70% of the snaps. One of those is going to happen. Indianapolis is going to make the playoffs. Why? They beat the Patriots on Saturday night, and they are now, well, it's not guaranteed. They are now one of 5 teams that sit at 8-6. If Cleveland wins tonight, they would be the 6th team that gets to 8-6, and Pittsburgh essentially is 8-6 because they are 7-6-1. You then have Miami at 7-7, Denver at 7-7, and if Vegas, baby, wins tonight, they would be 7-7. The AFC is just a jumbled mess over there. But Indianapolis, they have their 8th win. They beat the Patriots. With the Patriots' loss, the Chiefs are now the number 1 seed in the AFC. You got all that? Here we go. Here's what's left. The Bills beat the Panthers yesterday. That puts the Bills in good standing. They are currently the number 7 seed. The Dolphins won again. They got to 7-7, so they have stayed within reach of a playoff spot. The Titans lost yesterday, which means what? Now Indianapolis is just 1 game behind the Titans. They're really 2, though, because the Titans win the tiebreaker, right? They beat the Colts twice, I think. The Steelers, with the win, have maintained the opportunity to not only be a wild card team, but they're also only a half a game out of the division race in the AFC North. You got that? It gets better. The Bengals won yesterday. They beat Denver. So what does that mean? Well, you guessed it. Cincinnati is now the leader in the North. Why? Because Baltimore lost yesterday. They've now lost 3 straight. They lost to Green Bay. More on that game coming up. So the Bengals own the tiebreaker over Baltimore. Cincinnati's in, and Baltimore is currently out. They are the 8th seed at 8-6. The Ravens lost to the Packers. Now tonight, we've got Cleveland playing the Raiders. If Cleveland wins the game tonight, I believe they will be the number 4 seed, and they would be leading the AFC North. Whew. You got all that. That's what happened this weekend. I hope your weekend was as good. Now, we know on Friday, if you were listening to the Sports Bash, you obviously heard the Eagles don't play till tomorrow. What has happened between Friday, when the Eagles game got postponed, to now? Well, a whole heck of a lot if you weren't paying attention this weekend. 1, on Saturday, Washington essentially activated most of all their guys who were on the COVID list. John Allen, Montez Sweat. They had a whole group of defensive linemen that were on the COVID list. Magically, on Saturday, they were all healthy enough to play. You believe how that happened? Weird, right? Well, they're all healthy enough to play. You know who's not now? Landon Dickerson. Because in the time that the game got moved, Dickerson went on the COVID list, and now he's doubtful to play tomorrow night. Today, Brandon Sheriff, their all-pro right guard, he went on the COVID list, and now he's probably not going to play tomorrow night either. No decision has been made on their quarterback situation as of this moment in time, but that could change very fluidly as the show goes on today. You know, a lot of people complaining back and forth on whether or not the Eagles got screwed. Here's what I know. They moved the game to Tuesday. On Saturday, Washington all of a sudden had enough guys on the defensive line. They could have played, I guess, yesterday if they played. There is no guarantee by pushing it back that you weren't going to put yourself back in the same position. And that's why the NFL should not have given in here. There is no guarantee that either of these teams will be healthy enough and ready to go by tomorrow night. But I guarantee you they're going to force them to play no matter what happens now tomorrow. And that's why they should have kept the game yesterday. Look, this isn't about Philadelphia or Washington. We could say the same thing about LA and Seattle. Both of those games should have been played on Sunday. And at the very worst, why are they being pushed to Tuesday? Why were two games that were supposed to be played on Sunday getting pushed past Monday and over to Tuesday? The NFL caved in here, and they caved in big time. And it would only be apropos if Philadelphia now had an outbreak and said, look, now we can't field a team. Because Landon Dickerson's the first guy. Who knows by the end of the day what's going to happen to the rest of the guys in that room? What's going to happen if all of a sudden Jason Kelsey, Sue Opeta, Nate Herbig, Lane Johnson, and the same situation to Philadelphia that happened in Washington? Well, we have no offensive linemen available. Are they going to say, hey, let's move the game to Thursday now? Of course not. The NFL caved, and they caved big time. They put out something, and I get it. They were dated rules, and they've made the changes on those rules. But because they just were flying by the seat of their pants, you've put, forget just Philadelphia, Seattle, LA, and the one game tonight, you've put in a situation where you're basically robbing Peter to possibly pay Paul. The Browns still don't have a quarterback that's really ready to go. Baker Mayfield hasn't been able to get off the COVID list. Neither has Washington's quarterbacks at this moment in time. But when Washington is now starting to get guys off their COVID list, Philadelphia is starting to put guys on theirs. So you're just kicking the can down the road and just hoping that nothing else flares up. You know, last night, the 76ers moved their game from 8 to 7 until they couldn't play at all. The Sixers are down to 6 guys. They play again tonight. Guess what? The NBA put a new rule in and said, go just sign a guy off the street. So the Sixers did today. They signed Tyler Johnson to 10-day contract. It's part of the roster hardship allowance. Tyler Johnson's actually a pretty good player. Wasn't he the guy with the Heat? But if you think about it, these leagues are just flying by the seat of their pants right now. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to do this. And there's another league that's having all sorts of problems, and that's the NHL. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Flyers head coach Mike Yeo. With the Flyers starting to play some better hockey, what better time to have Mike Yeo on the show? That rhymed. Couple of things. Think about this. Morgan Frost, Max Williams, both out on COVID protocols. Wade Allison, another injury in the minors. All 3 guys were taking advantage of the opportunity. We'll see what Mike Yeo's thoughts are on how unfortunate it is for those guys to not be a part of this. Plus, his thoughts on Ristolainen's season so far and how he has made a couple of changes to help this Flyers team out. That's coming up next. Flyers head coach Mike Yeo on the other side here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, EHT. 226. Hope everybody is getting ready for the Christmas season this weekend. Of course, Christmas Day, Saturday, we'll have an NFL doubleheader for you here on 97.3 ESPN. Tonight, we've got a Monday Night Football double dip for you. Tomorrow, we'll have the Eagles and the Washington football team. You can hear it right here live. Coverage starts at 6 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget, we have the double dip on Saturday and the Eagles and Giants on Sunday. So the Eagles Tuesday, Eagles Sunday, right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll be talking with Flyers head coach Mike Yeo in just a moment here on the Sports Bash. Flyers, by the way, for those of you who may have written them off during a 10-game losing skid, they are all of a sudden playing some very good hockey. They've won 3 out of the last 4. We'll talk to Mike Yeo about some of the changes that he has made to the Flyers power play. Most specifically, they beat the Senators the other night 4-3, beat the Devils 6-1, Coyotes 5-3, Golden Knights 4-3, lost to the Canadians the other night 3-2 overtime, but definitely playing much better since Mike Yeo has taken over. And obviously, tough situation where they've lost 10 in a row, and then you make a coaching change, and all of a sudden they start to play better. Curious to see his thoughts as to what has kind of entered the team that they were missing maybe before. So we'll talk to him about that coming up. Sports Batch is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan now open Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. Today we got a little bit of a shift around because of the football game at 5 o'clock tonight. Geoff Kerr is going to join us in the 3 o'clock hour. Casey Joyner, who normally does one thought on every game, but because there's still 4 games left to be played, he's going to join us tomorrow for one thought on every game. So we'll get Casey's take on week number 15 in the NFL tomorrow because there's still 4 games left. Now, 2 of the games are tomorrow. So typically we'll go through all the games, one thought every game. Tomorrow we'll go through one thought every game and then preview the 2 games, including the Eagles and the Washington football team. And then, of course, the Seattle plays the Rams tomorrow night. But so a little bit of a, this time of the year, we get down to the holiday season. We've got all sorts of different things, moving parts here, there, everywhere, trying to get as much in as we can between now and the New Year's, of course. Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN. The one thing, too, I was looking because the Flyers were like, I don't know, 10 in a row. They were terrible for a little while there. What this little 3-game streak has done for them, they have 29 points. So the playoff situation, when you take a look at the wild card, because you're not winning the division, they are kind of right in the wild card race. Detroit has 33 points. Philadelphia has 29 points. So I will say this. We've been talking a lot about the NFC wild card, the AFC wild card, and how wonky everything is and how close everything is. On the AFC side of things, all these teams are 8-6. On the NFC side of things, you've got all these teams like right at 7-7, 6-7, all fighting for one spot. That essentially is going to be the Eastern Conference playoff race because Pittsburgh at 39 points is the leading wild card team right now. Detroit's at 33. There's a 6-point difference between Detroit and Pittsburgh. And then Detroit is 3 up on Boston. They're 4 up on Columbus and Philadelphia. So I would think that Philadelphia is really going to be in play for just the one wild card spot. Unless they get really scorching hot, they have a 10-point gap between them and Pittsburgh right now. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on.
I also think it might be a positive sign for the Flyers to get to the postseason if they could, because it gives those young players another opportunity to get into the postseason and get some more of that experience.
We talk about that a lot, though, right? And Woody had Durso on. Now, I would imagine you ask Mike Yeo, he wants to make the playoffs. He's not going to say, no, let's take a step back. Durso said it, though. Does this team need to kind of hit rock bottom a little bit? Or have they played over the last 4 games, 3 out of 4, where they've won some games? Does that make you say, well, no, I still think they're kind of a team that has middle ground kind of written all over them. So does making the playoffs, they are clearly not on Tampa Bay's level, Toronto's level, Carolina, Washington. They are New York. They are definitely now you could make the argument that Tampa Bay was the 1 seed a couple of years ago, and they were the best team in hockey, won the President's Trophy, and lost in the first round. I mean, hockey of all the sports, it is so up in the air once you get to the playoffs.
It is. I just wonder, like, you want to walk away from a season with a positive vibe at some point, right? You don't want to end your season like a losing streak or anything like that. At least if you walk away, whether you are in the playoffs or you had a chance to make the postseason and you won down the stretch, at least gives you an idea of, all right, Carter Hart's better this year. Other guys grew. We've seen some evolution from this team.
Well, the Carter Hart thing, I think, is the one big fix that has been a part of this season that you can kind of hang your hat on right now. No matter what is going on around this team that has been dreadful, they definitely have the Carter Hart thing. I don't want to say definitely. Well, we can talk to Mike Yo about that when we talk to him, but I would definitely say the one takeaway so far through this, 24, what do they play? 12, 12, and 5, so 29 games so far, is that I feel like they feel like Carter Hart is at least back to the guy who was a couple of years ago, not the guy that we saw last year. That's the one big takeaway.
And it's a huge takeaway because that was really in many ways the biggest issue last year was you were concerned about, man, Carter Hart was growing and then he went backwards, took 2 steps back, it seemed like. And now he's back more normal to the guy that we saw previously.
Definitely. I mean, last year it was definitely a concern that, hey, you had all this faith in this guy and, you were excited by the fact that the Flyers finally had a goaltender because that's the one position that this team constantly had issues with. And the fact that it felt like they finally found that guy. So getting him back to where he is right now, I think that has been a big positive, and it's definitely something to kind of, say, hey, through this first 29 games of this season has been a positive for this team so far. Now the rest, we got to figure out how this all shakes up. I'm interested to see, too. Ryan Ellis was the guy that got in the offseason. He hasn't played a whole heck of a lot. He played 4 games. That's been a problem. So the injury issues, how that has been part of why this team maybe wasn't where they were. Now, They lost 10 straight games. It looked like they weren't all that interested in some of the games. Gave up 7 to the Avalanche, 7 to the Lightning, 4 to the Rangers, 5 to the Devils, 6 to the Hurricanes. I mean, there's a stretch there where they just looked outmanned. And when you look outmanned at this level, that's typically saying, I don't know that we're all that excited about playing right now.
And one of the things that came out of all this was the fact that you are now forced into, whether they wanted to or not, to play certain players maybe they want to play, and now it's an opportunity for evaluation.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where this team goes because with the NHL right now, like everything, nobody knows what's going on. Now, Durso wrote a story this morning that the Flyers are set to go on as scheduled this week. The NHL has essentially said they are going to try to push through as much as possible. Now, Canada might say differently. They might say, hey, we're not jumping on board this thing here, NHL.
Well, Canada's already come down and their cooperation with the NHL. The NHL is like, look, we understand you have a different set of protocols in the United States, so we're just going to shut down all these teams, and we're just going to wait until after the holiday break and then move forward from there, because their theory is,
it feels like everybody should be hitting just the holiday pause button right now. Hey, you know what? Let's all just take 2 weeks off, go enjoy Christmas, New Year's, and we'll all try to come back after the New Year's and see if we can get this thing right.
Well, we know one league doesn't want to do that aside from the NFL, and that's the NBA, because Christmas Day is a huge deal for them.
Yeah, but guess what? They're up against 2 NFL games. So is it as big a day that it used to be? I know they have 5 games that day, and the NFL only has 2. But guess what? 2 NFL games basically from 4 o'clock on knocks out all the NBA action.
Listen, I don't think the NBA wants to lose that revenue money, though.
No, you're right. But I'm just, it's unfortunate for them that they're up against the behemoth that is the NFL.
Sure.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, live video, streaming, of course, over on the YouTube channel. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City will jump on board and get his thoughts on everything that happened over the weekend. We had cancellations. We had all sorts of stuff. Now, when we talked on Friday, of course, the Eagles-Washington game canceled. So we got all that to jump into and more. The Sports Bash is live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. All right, 241. Hopefully the weekend was a nice one for you. The Christmas weekend is coming up. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. He is brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business. Online, calvielectric.com. Let's take a look back. It was a wild yesterday because the NFL playoff race crazy. I don't want to say crazy, but you look at it now, Mike. I mean, the AFC has 5 teams, 8-6. The NFC, I mean, things could change right now on a Monday. You have the Saints are the current number 2 seed. That could change tonight with Minnesota's game. I guess it could change again tomorrow with Philadelphia's game. So the NFL is pushing on, COVID or not. They don't care. Let's keep on going, and let's put games on Monday night and Tuesday night while we're at it.
Yeah, they're probably sad they can't have a game Wednesday and Wednesday night, right? They got a game Thursday. They take off Christmas Eve, come back Christmas Day and Sunday. And example of how topsy-turvy the NFC was, or the NFL is, I think I read today where, Baltimore goes for 2 against Green Bay. If they make that 2-point conversion, they're the number 2 seed in the AFC, and they don't make it. And technically today they're out of the playoffs. They're 8th. So that shows you one play, shows you like how much, these playoff matchups can change in so quickly.
Hindsight now, did the NFL do the right thing by pushing Philadelphia and Washington back? Now, Washington on Saturday magically got most of its players back off the COVID list, and then Philadelphia had to put players on the COVID list. So now Philadelphia is going to be somewhat shorthanded when they play Tuesday, and Washington is going to be closer to full strength.
Yeah, I know all the talk about how there was supposed to be forfeits and they set the rules and now they're rewriting the rules. And I heard all the for lack of a better word, whining from Eagles fans. It's not fair. We're at a disadvantage. However, when you look at the bigger overall picture, the NFL was probably looking at forfeiting 3 football games this weekend, having 3 football games be forfeits. And I don't think that's good for the NFL, and I don't think that's good for society in general. So by pushing it back, each game, I guess, got pushed back 2 days. And avoiding those forfeits, I think that's a much better alternative. And yes, everything perfect. Is it 100% fair for the Philadelphia Eagles? No, but life's not fair. So and the Eagles are a professional football team. So go win the game, because Washington is still, even though they added some guys back, they're still missing a lot of key guys in key positions.
Well, it looks like the NFL over the weekend, look, they pushed these games back and they're trying to not have it happen again. So, Mike, they basically ripped up what they decided early in the season and have said, if you are asymptomatic and you are vaccinated, they're not testing people essentially anymore unless you don't feel good.
Right. Well, and, Mike, that's, and I hate to even, you bring this subject up and you get both sides. You just get screamed at by both sides. But eventually, and the NBA's got to come to the same situation. I mean, how do you handle vaccinated and boosted players who are asymptomatic? How do you allow them to play, or at least let them get back quicker than they are back now? The NFL is basically saying, if you're vaccinated, we're not testing you unless you've had an extraordinarily high risk, close contact, or you're showing symptoms. And, I mean, that's probably the direction we've got to go in, or else you're going to have, notice today was a lot calmer. We didn't have 70 guys put on the COVID list today in the NFL, as opposed to last Monday. So it was probably a step they had to take, for them to go forward, basically.
Yeah. Now, I would, what would happen? Washington essentially they kicked the can down the road, hoping that nothing happens. But what if Philadelphia, Landon Dickerson went on the COVID list yesterday, and if the Philadelphia said, look, he's on the COVID list now, all of a sudden Kelsey, Johnson, and Mailata are also on the COVID list.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been worst case scenario. Now that hasn't happened, basically, and obviously the NFL is trying to avoid that situation with this new. With their new testing policy, right? That would have been worst case scenario. I just come back to the fact that I don't think it would have been good for society as a whole. Imagine the story this weekend. It would have been worldwide news if the NFL forfeited 3 games because of COVID-19, and the ramifications of that. I think would have gone beyond football. So basically, if they can avoid that by pushing the games back 2 days, is it fair to the Philadelphia Eagles? No. But it wasn't fair to the New York Giants last year when the Eagles put Sudsy in the game in the fourth quarter. So
come on, that's a different situation. That's a different situation here. All right, Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City, taking a look back. Now, yesterday was wild because, Mike, it may not have affected the wild card races all that much, but Tampa Bay and Arizona both losing has really made the NFC #1 seed, or the seeding. It appears that this now might go all the way down. How does Tampa lose to New Orleans, get shut out? And how the hell does Arizona lose to Detroit?
Yeah, well, and the other thing, too, is, Mike, how many fantasy playoff teams did Tampa Bay and Arizona take down last night? The Arizona quarterback,
I played against Brady. I played against Brady last night. Woo!
Exactly. Goddard got hurt in the game. Evans got hurt in the game.
Then he's out for the year, by the way. Torn ACL. That just came out.
Right. And there are some teams, even when Brady was in New England, he seemed to have problems with the Dolphins a lot. Brady, since he's gone to Tampa, has just not played well against the Saints. And last night, he looked, he looked every bit of 45 years old. Am I going to count him out at this point? No. And am I going to automatically vault the Saints to the top, say that they're going to be that number 7 seed? No. That might be, a matchup thing there, basically, with the Saints and Brady. I'll tell you the one team that I like, that team that's really coming on, is the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, they won again this weekend. I think they're 8-6. They have some pedigree there. They've been in the Super Bowl before. Everybody likes to dump on Jimmy Garoppolo, but he did take them to the Super Bowl, and he had a lead in the fourth quarter of that game. So watch out for the San Francisco 49ers. I think they're playing as well as anybody in the NFC right now.
Yeah, you got that side of things. The NFC is crazy. The AFC, I mean, you got 5 teams 8-6. You mentioned Baltimore. They're the 8th seed at 8-6 right now. You got Cincinnati in, but if Cleveland wins tonight, I think they're going to be the division leader. If Cleveland beats the Vegas today at 5:00, I think Cleveland takes over the AFC North playoff spot. I don't know what that does to Cincinnati, but the AFC, wild, because we had New England lose on Saturday.
Right.
And in that game, Carson Wentz went over the 75% threshold, Mike McGarry. Now, I see people on Twitter, bemoaning the fact that the pick is not going to be great. Miami keeps winning. That pick's not going to – you have 3 picks. It's like, here's a bag of free money, and then the Eagles fans say it's too heavy.
Yeah, the Eagles fans like to complain a little bit. They do have the 3 picks. It wasn't what it was early in the season when everybody thought the picks were going to be 1, 6, and 10 or whatever. They're not that, but you still have 3 picks in the first round that you can still deal with. And let's face facts. In the NFL draft is not the NBA draft. You can get a better player at 21 than you can at 7.
Correct.
What was Micah Parsons? What was
12.
he? 12. So he might be the best player to come out of the draft so far this year, based on
Justin Jefferson was what, 22?
Correct. So anywhere in the first round, draft picks in the NFL in the first or second round, even the third round, are worth their weight in gold. It's not the NBA where there's only 2 or 3 players in each draft.
I saw a Dolphins guy tweet this. Eagles thought they snookered Finns, but first round pick they got from Finns is only 14th and falling. I'm thinking, you still got snookered. The pick could be 30. You gave up a first round pick. Like, don't try to talk yourself into saying that, hey, we didn't get beaten that trade. You got beaten that trade.
Right. It's not the NBA. You can get a good player that can play on your team for the next decade at 14, 15, 16 in the first round. First round picks are worth their weight in gold in the NFL. Absolutely.
Mike, the Giants 4-10. They will lose 10 games for the 5th straight year and the 7th time in 8 years. Is the train going to get back on the track in New York anytime soon?
I don't see how. I hope everybody enjoyed their medium Pepsi yesterday at Giant Stadium for Fan Appreciation Day, because I don't see it work. You don't know right now. You're looking at a new GM there in Gettleman. He's got to go. The coach, Joe Judge, they say they might give him another year. I mean, he's done nothing to after having a decent start last year. This year has been a complete sham for him, and each time he opens his mouth post game, you wonder what planet he's on. So, and Daniel Jones, the quarterback, we still have huge questions about him, and they are officially unwatchable. That game yesterday, I don't think the Cowboys broke a sweat. 21-6, they're unwatchable now as the season goes on. So that is looking like a massive rebuilding or change of culture. Something's got to go on there with the Giants, because this is right now is unwatchable football. Maybe the worst stretch in Giants history. And that's saying something when you look back at the 1970s.
Warms my heart to hear that. Warms my heart. Mike, high school basketball opened up this weekend. I don't know that there was a lot of cancellations. It looks like a lot of stuff got in, and it looked like we had a pretty good weekend. Yeah,
we got off to a good start. A great weekend at Ocean City PBA tip-off weekend. A minimal amount of teams kind of impacted by COVID. The Egg Harbor Township boys, we wrote about a lot of them in the preseason. They came out with 2 big wins. They're kind of living up to the hype early on. Paul Rodeo, after undergoing the surgery to repair blood clots in his chest and leg in October, he was back on the sidelines on Saturday night for St. Augustine beating Lower Cape May. That was great to see. And the Atlantic City and Absegami girls got off to good starts, and that's where I'll be headed. After I get off with you, I'll be headed down the Parkway to Absegami tonight to watch the Atlantic City and the Absegami girls play a highly touted game there. So you're right. We got off to a good start. There were good crowds in the gyms. Every day we play, we just knock on wood and keep going.
Hey, you never know. The Sixers might need a guy. They have a new rule in the NBA now. Need a guy. Exactly. Need a guy, sign a guy. There you go. Need a guy, sign a guy. They signed Tyler Johnson a little while ago. Was that the Miami guy?
I believe so. And did they sign Miles Powell, the Seton Hall guy who was with the
Knicks that was yesterday.
Signed him too. And you see Isaiah Thomas is back with Los Angeles, back from the dead to play with the Lakers now. So goofy times in the NBA.
Could be Jamal Crawford at 45 shooting threes.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Get Joe Johnson, get some of those 3-on-3 guys out there, basically,
I could see it one night when Iverson's sitting front center court and they say, hey, man, we need you to play too. Right. That's what the sports world is. Exactly. All right, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City at AC Press McGarry. And he was kind enough to join us on this Monday. All right, Mike, we'll talk to you down the road, man.
All right, we'll see you Wednesday. Thanks.
That's Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. He's brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Some news over with the Washington football team. A couple of their position coaches are out, and Brandon Sheriff, as I said in the open today, he will not be available, it looks like, on Tuesday night either, as he is on the COVID-19 reserve list as well. So, very fluid, because, again, you don't know when these guys are back in the building. Who knows what happened over the weekend. You kind of kick the can down the road a little bit, and this is what you might get. I mentioned Tyler Johnson signed with the Sixers. Remember him from the Phoenix Suns? I think he played a little bit with the Heat. Maybe the Heat and the Suns. I don't remember with Brooklyn, but he just signed with the Sixers as well. The Sixers need players. They got guys on the COVID list. They play tonight against Boston. We'll keep you up to date whether they play as well. Sports Bash live, 97.3. Hour 2 of the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's going on, everybody? NFL action in 2 hours. We'll have it for you live on 97.3 ESPN. Cleveland and Vegas, playoff implications. Cleveland wins. They're the top team in the North. Vegas wins. You know, this has some Vegas implications to it, too. I wish I could figure all this out like boom, boom, boom. But there's so many different tiebreakers. So if Vegas wins, they'd be 7-7. They would be tied with Denver and Miami. They would be a half a game behind Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is, of course, 7-6-1. Now, what happens? I think if Cleveland wins, I think they move to the 4 seed. But what happens to the Bengals, though? The Bengals are one of the 8-6 teams. They would be tied with Indianapolis, the Chargers, and Buffalo. Now, we know they're ahead of Baltimore, but I'm pretty sure if Cleveland wins, that they are I saw Jeff Kerr tweet this out, and Jeff's going to join us in about 25 minutes, so he might have a pretty good handle on all this. But if Cleveland wins tonight, they would be the 4th seed as the North leader. What happens to then Cincinnati in the tie-breaking scenarios with Indianapolis, the Chargers, and the Bills? Do you have any clarity on that?
Well, first of all, so that means they would also have the same record as Baltimore. So they would have the tiebreaker over Baltimore.
Well, yeah, I already figured Baltimore because they obviously, if Baltimore had the tiebreaker over Cincinnati, they would be in the lead in the North, not Cincinnati. I'm smart enough to figure that one out, Josh.
Well, maybe the audience didn't know that.
I just said that. What do you mean the audience didn't know that? Cincinnati is the 4th seed. Baltimore is out.
Yeah, and maybe the audience didn't know they both had the same record.
Do you hear what he's telling you people? He really thinks you're dumb.
No, I don't think that. Come on.
I mean, for him to have to explain that. Cincinnati's the 4, Baltimore's out.
I'm listening to a national radio show this morning.
I don't care about them. We're smart people here.
And they didn't even know that Miami was 7-7.
Well, I've been telling you for weeks that Miami could be who's in. And you guys all said, no.
I'm just saying, if a national radio show doesn't remember a team's record is, am I supposed to assume the audience always knows?
No. It's not about the record. Cincinnati's the 4. Baltimore's the 8. Therefore, Cincinnati has the tiebreaker over Baltimore. Right. If Cleveland wins tonight, I believe they have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati. My question is, what happens to Cincinnati? Are they 5, 6, 7, or are they out?
Well, Cincinnati has a better conference record than Buffalo. Cincinnati is 6-3 in the conference. Buffalo is 5-5.
Well, do we have head-to-heads? I mean, how do you break a 4-team tie? Really, it would be a 5-team tie because Baltimore would be a part of the 5-team tie.
Well, Cincinnati's already ahead of Baltimore, so that they wouldn't be out there. I'm assuming that because it's going by conference record, Cincinnati would be ahead of Buffalo in that scenario. So
the only question would be because Indianapolis is the 5.
Correct.
They are the 5 for a reason because they win the tiebreaker over the Chargers. They have a tiebreaker over Buffalo. They all have the same record. So Cincinnati, where do they factor in with Indianapolis? I guess it would come down to who has the tiebreaker between Cincy and Indy would really be what it would be, right? What it would be the end result here, right?
Indy has a 7-3 conference record. Cincy has a 6-3. So in that scenario,
did they play each other?
No.
Are you just guessing that?
Well, I had the schedule in front of me. I didn't see it.
Okay.
So
I'm just saying, were you just guessing without any facts on that one?
No, I was looking through.
You're right.
Schedule.
They did not play against each other this year. All right. So it would really come down between who has the tiebreaker between Cincinnati and Indianapolis, because Indianapolis has the tiebreaker on all the other teams.
Correct.
So however they got to that, Indianapolis breaks the tie they have wins over Buffalo, Los Angeles, and Baltimore based on best win percentage in conference games. So they're at the conference is the tiebreaker of how Indianapolis became the 5. So I would imagine you would use that same tie-breaking scenario because they didn't play each other. They're not in the same division. So then it would go to conference record. And right now, Indy is 7-3, Cincinnati 6-3. So I think what this means would be Cincinnati would move to 6.
Correct. And the Chargers
would drop to 7, and Buffalo would fall to 8. Right. Oh, boy. So
and
this
then
game
Baltimore
tonight,
would be 9, by the way.
Baltimore would slide down to 9, and everybody else
Stays
would
pat.
stay the same because Cleveland is 9 currently. They would move up. It would bounce all those people down 1. Pittsburgh would stay at 10. Now Miami is 7-7. Now if Vegas wins the game tonight, they get to 7-7.
Right.
And then they would have the tie break, or they would have a tie scenario with Denver and Miami. And why is this big? Well, because they're only would be a 1 game out, right? I mean, Vegas, if they win tonight, they're 7-7, and they're just 1 game out of a playoff berth all of a sudden. That's why the 5 o'clock game tonight is a huge game on the AFC side. On the NFC side of things, and we can get into that in just a minute, Geoff Kerr is going to join us at 3:25. Josh, the NFC side, it's a big one because Minnesota is involved. It's not so big for Chicago.
No, Chicago's cooked.
So Minnesota,
they're 6-7.
If
right
they
now.
win tonight, they would be 7-7. And I believe their 7-7 is better than New Orleans' 7-7. But I don't know why. Did they play each other? Because New Orleans was behind them when the day started. But I don't know if that was because Philadelphia beat them head-to-head. Like, who wins the tiebreaker between Minnesota and New Orleans? I'm pretty sure I heard this morning that if Minnesota wins tonight, they are the 7th seed and New Orleans is out. So Minnesota must have the tiebreaker over the Saints. Did they play each other?
No, they didn't.
All right.
I'm checking the other scenario.
It's not a head-to-head.
Right.
They're not in the same division. So now you're going to conference. New Orleans is 5-5. Minnesota is 4-4. But if they win tonight, they would be 5. No, they would be 5-4, Minnesota.
Right.
Yeah, you can't win and lose in the same day.
No, I would say they have 5
Although
wins.
in this NFL, you could play 2 games in the same day, and that wouldn't even surprise me.
Well, that would be hilarious. But
that's what I said. The Eagles and Giants and Washington football team should just do a day-night doubleheader. Have the Eagles play Washington on Sunday at noon, and then have them come back at night and play the Giants in primetime. You could have a whole little NFC East bubble and play all 4 games.
Just have a Royal Rumble.
Right, exactly. Just boom. So
the 25th entry.
So Minnesota wins tonight. They would be 7-7.
Right.
They would be 5-4 in the conference, and that would bounce them over the Saints.
Because the Saints have 5 conference losses, and the Vikings have 4.
Correct. The Saints would then move to 8, and then Philadelphia and Washington would be 9-10. The winner of that game, now this is where it would get interesting, because if Philadelphia wins,
right,
they have the tiebreaker over New Orleans. So I think
Correct.
Philly would move to 8.
Definitively.
Correct, because they do not have the tiebreaker against Minnesota.
Correct.
Currently.
No, they don't.
If Washington wins, they would move to 7, I believe, because they have the tiebreaker over Minnesota. And I'm not sure about New Orleans. I think they have the tiebreaker over New Orleans because of conference record. Did they play each other? Because Philly did play New Orleans.
Washington lost to New Orleans.
All right,
year.
so New Orleans has the tiebreaker over Washington.
Correct.
So this game tonight, man, there could be a lot happening based on the Minnesota win coupled with a either Washington win or a Philadelphia win, how that will differentiate what the standings will look like on Wednesday when I do who's in, who's out, which I'm going to do on Wednesday this week because there are 2 games on Tuesday.
Correct.
One of which, by the way, LA, if they win, I would imagine they will take over first place. Hold on. Did they beat Arizona twice or did they split?
I'm double checking that right now.
Because I know they beat them once. Do they play again or did they already play twice?
I think they've already played twice. I'm double checking it.
Because if the Rams win tomorrow against Seattle, and here's another wrench in the wheel. If Seattle wins tomorrow, they're
1-1.
Okay, so they split. Arizona's 4-1 in the division, so they would stay in first place, but they'd be tied, both 10-4.
Right.
So if the Rams win tomorrow night, they'd be 10-4. But now, essentially, if they win a game and Arizona loses again, Arizona plays Dallas coming up
in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Ooh, man. Crazy.
Would you like Arizona's schedule for the next couple of weeks?
I know they play Dallas 2 weeks. Who do they play next week?
Next week.
I mean, you lost to freaking Detroit. How am I supposed to have any? Now, I've been saying all year, I do not believe in this Arizona team. Now they've lost DeAndre Hopkins.
They play Christmas Day night versus the Colts.
Don't like them.
Then they play at Dallas the next week.
I'm beginning to not like them. I definitively don't like them there.
And then they finish the season at home versus Seattle.
Don't like them there. I've been saying Miami on the AFC side, and I said 2 weeks ago, if Seattle keeps winning, watch out for that team. And guess where they are right now? 5-8. If they win tomorrow, they would be 6-8. What would that mean? They would only be one game out of a playoff spot.
Would you like the Rams schedule real quick?
I would.
So obviously they play Seattle Tuesday night. Then
wait. Oh, Seattle Tuesday night. Go ahead.
Then they go to Minnesota on Sunday.
To Minnesota. Oh man, that is who?
This is the Rams.
The Rams. Rams play Minnesota. Okay, that's a good spot for Philly because you want Minnesota to lose to the Rams.
Then they travel again to Baltimore the week after that to the Rams.
Okay, Baltimore. What'd you think of Huntley yesterday? Now, this reminded me of the movie. What's the movie? What's it? Is it Any Given Sunday? Where the backup comes in and was Jamie Foxx?
Yeah, Jamie Foxx. Any Given Sunday. Yeah,
and
he just starts running all over the place and winning games.
They just stick with him. Like Huntley is basically a better throwing version of Lamar Jackson.
I wouldn't go that far.
He's a more polished thrower than Jackson, don't you think?
I don't think so. I don't think he's that polished. I think the Packers played some bad defense times in that game.
All right. Well, Jackson should be back.
I mean, a couple of those passes to Mark Andrews, I mean, he was wide open a couple of times. The Packers were like, oh, man, we forgot about Mark Andrews. Like, hey, you imbecile. He's the best receiver they have on the field.
Right.
Someone should defend him.
Well, I thought the kid did a good job yesterday.
He did do a good job, and Baltimore's going to get an awesome draft pick when they trade him this offseason.
Okay, so that's a tough game.
And then the Rams finish the year at home versus San Francisco. That's a tough game.
They got a tough slate.
Yeah, they do. It's going to be interesting out there.
Mm-hmm.
The West is wild.
Well, there's 4 games left, and they all have huge implications on the playoffs right now.
Yes.
All 4. The only team that is really not involved is Chicago, because even if they win, they're 5-9. They ain't making it.
Yeah, nobody cares about Chicago at this point. I don't even think Chicago even cares about the Bears at this point.
No, probably not. But so the Cleveland-Vegas game, if Cleveland wins, that really will change a lot because Cleveland now Cleveland would go from being the 9 seed out, Josh, to being the 4 seed with a home playoff game.
That's wild.
Right? Well, what did McGarry say? If Baltimore would have made that 2-point conversion yesterday, they would have been the 2 seed. Instead, they lost, and now they're 8.
Right.
Now, what do you make of that whole 2-point conversion?
I think that the idea of going for 2 points was the right move. I thought the play call was the horrible move.
Yeah. All right. Looks like Mike Yo is going to join us right now, Flyers head coach here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. So we will punch him into the conversation, and we'll shift gears and bring in Flyers head coach Mike Yo, who is probably getting ready for some who knows what right now, some wild times in the NHL, wild times with the Flyers, wild times with everything. But, Mike, you got to keep it together. I guess that's the nature of the business. Welcome aboard. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks. And I'm trying to keep it together.
I think we're all just trying to keep it together. You probably don't know if you're here, there, or anywhere at this point, man.
At this point, I've kind of settled down a little bit after today. Today was a crazy day for sure. So started right first thing this morning, plan a practice, get in here, you do everything that you want to do. And then next thing you know, you get out there and you have to make some adjustments on the fly.
Well, the adjustments are going everywhere. I mean, the other day we're getting ready, people don't realize like what you're doing, what we're doing. I mean, I get a call, the Eagles game's moved. We carry the Eagles on the radio. We got to pull it off the schedule. We got to change all the commercials. Nobody cares about those things, right? We got the Flyers game tomorrow night. We had the Sixers game get pulled last night. So how are you being thrown into this position where you're now the head guy adjusting to being a head coach in a COVID world?
Yeah, well, obviously throw some different twists out there as far as, some of the guys that you're working with, some of the things you've been trying to implement. And next thing you know, they get pulled out of the lineup or whatever. And, just the sort of the chemistry that we've been building with the lines, we lose some of that. But as much of what we're trying to build here is sort of a game and X's and O's and, structure, tactics, all that kind of stuff. It's very much about an attitude, and one of the things that we want to be and become is one of those teams that, every time you just sort of, you can always think about those sports teams where there's a team and you think that they're written off and you think that they're going to be done, and then they find a way to get the job done. And that's kind of what we're selling right now. Is nobody gives a crap about whether we have guys out with COVID. Nobody cares, what's going on, except we've got a game tomorrow and our job's to win the game. So we've got to rise up to that challenge. We've got to get excited about it. Some guys are going to get more opportunities. Some guys are going to get more ice time. Some guys are going to get into the lineup and do your job.
Coach, obviously you were here with this group of guys. So now you've just kind of slid up the bench. Your voice is a little louder. What have you noticed with essentially the same group of guys that maybe has changed in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I'd rather not talk too much about kind of what went on before. Obviously, things weren't going so well. And so when we came in as a staff and when the change happened, my focus was just sort of to look at the areas where we felt that we needed to improve and really focus on that. And all I could say is since that point, we've tried to introduce some new things. We've tried to sort of have a greater focus on some of the things that were already there. But the leadership from the group, the buy-in from the group, the work ethic from the group has been outstanding. And right from the start, we said, we're playing catch up. We're trying at this point of the season, we're, 20 games into the season, whatever it was at that point, we're trying to implement and build things that other teams have been doing since training camp, since day one. So we're playing catch up against these teams. So we're not there yet by any means, but I feel like every day we get a little bit closer to what we want it to look like. All
right, Coach, one thing that has been brought up to by a lot of Flyers fans when I said that you were joining us today, they want to know, the power play has changed. All of a sudden the power play seems like it's getting going. That was an area where you really struggled. So what kind of things did maybe you implement that has kind of kickstarted that a little bit?
Well, one of the things we did was we sort of put guys, I would say we big boys together on the first unit. That was one kind of focus that we wanted to concentrate on, that we knew we needed to get it turned around. So let's put the guys out there that have done it in the past, put them in positions where we know that they're comfortable, they've had success in the past. But whatever system you have, whatever group you have together, successful power play units is always about one thing really. It's about quick movement, quick attacks, and you look at when we have had success, how we do that. It doesn't matter whether you're attacking off shots. Those shots can come from the middle top of the blue line. Usually you have more success if you're getting them from inside the dots, more from the top of the circles and down. But those shots have to be quick. And then your attacks can come from the middle of the ice. Your attacks can come from down low. We want to attack from different areas, but we want to be quick with those attacks. And I feel like sometimes we have the tendency on our power play to want to slow it down, to try to make one pass to open up a play. It's the successful power plays, move it 2, 3, 4 times and then attack, recover the puck, move it 2 times, attack. And the goals that we've scored, that's what we've been doing.
Coach, one thing, we've been Flyers fans. I'm 44. Most of the people listening are probably in my age group, a little younger, a little older, but we're all hanging out and have not seen a goaltender really going back to 1985 or something like that. The goaltender had a rough year last year. Has that, in your mind, been rectified? Do you feel that Carter has kind of found his form?
I really believe that. I mean, I think Carter had a great start to the year last year, and I felt like, obviously he didn't have a great year, but I think a lot of that can also be attributed to some of the play that was in front of him as well. And I really believe that it's always connected. The better our forwards play, the better our defense is going to play. The better, our defense plays, the better the goalie is going to play on, so on. But I think right from day one this year, he's been outstanding for us, and in particular his last couple of games. We only got 1 point in Montreal, but we had no chance of getting any points if he wasn't as outstanding as he was in the first period. And then, obviously those games leading into that, his game in Vegas was unbelievable. So again, I think that our team's getting a little bit better, and that'll really help Hartsey an awful lot, but I think that he has really done a great job for us right from day one this year.
And then obviously one of the big moves Chuck made this offseason was Ellis, and he really has only played 4 games for you. I mean, how different is this season if he's out there for, 29 games like everybody else for the most part?
Yeah, well, obviously, like, he's a real important player to us. There's a reason why you give up the assets that you do to get a player like that. And I think one of the biggest areas is the way that he's able to exit the puck out of your own zone. And, we can talk all you want about defensive structure and being well or playing well defensively. But in this game, if you have to defend all the time, you're going to be in trouble. And he's a guy that is able to relieve pressure, break pressure, allow you to get on the attack. So we miss that. We miss that a lot. But again, right now, we don't have the luxury of having him in the lineup, so we just have to continue to focus with the group we have. And lately, the guys that we have been doing a great job.
Last one for you, Coach. I know it's a crazy time for everybody. You get your Christmas shopping done, by the way?
None. But now, my wife, I give her credit, though. She has texted me a few times and said, I just picked up another gift for myself from you. So she seems to be getting it done for me right now. So, and I'm okay with that.
I like that. I got my gift from you for me. Thank you so much. It's not going to be like one of those GMC commercials where she's got like this huge brand new pickup, is it?
Well, I would take a pickup. I don't think it'll be a pickup. No, I think.
No, she's going to buy it for herself.
Yeah. Well, as long as I get to use it. A pickup truck would be okay. I don't see her buying that, but no, I don't think that's going to be the case. But usually when I get something, it gets returned anyway, so I'm okay with her doing this.
I'll leave you with this. You guys, obviously made a lot of moves in the offseason. Ristolainen came in. We talked about Ellis, but Atkinson, what he brings differently from what you've had, when you had obviously in the past, how much Cam has kind of brought, and obviously he's new. He's only played 29 games. How much more can he bring to the table?
He brings a ton. Right from the start when this change happened, he was one of the first guys that I went to, and the reason was that he came from a program with the Blue Jackets where I always felt that the sum was greater, the whole was greater than the sum of their parts, and I just mean that their team was always hard to play against. They didn't necessarily have a bunch of superstars, but man, they played hard and they played the right way, and the year before Tampa won the Cup, they swept them because of the things that they did. So he came from a program that was similar to what we want to bring here, which is being hard to play against, aggressive offensively, tight checking defensively. And so I told him, I said, we're going to lean on you. You got to be my example. And he's done that right from, he's done it all year. But, it's a nice luxury as a coach when you're talking about the way you want to do something. You have a guy like that to go show the way, and you can show everybody else why and the result when you do it.
Well, Coach, first off, happy holidays to you and your family. Happy New Year if we don't talk to you between now and then, which is probably doubtful. Had to be a little odd playing in Montreal the other night with no fans again, right? I guess that was kind of an eerie situation. Going back to that had to be a little eerie.
Yeah, that was bizarre for sure. Especially, we found out basically right before our pregame meeting, so it was a curveball, and I give the players credit. I mean, they battled hard, and there's still emotion in the game, but it's definitely not the same. That's for sure.
Well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it, and we hope to catch up with you in the new year, pal.
Okay, yeah. Much appreciated, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, of course, we're your home for Flyers hockey, 97.3 ESPN. That's Mike Yeo, the Flyers' new interim head coach. He took over, and the Flyers are now playing some very good hockey, 3-4, and they will be back in action. Here, let's take a look at when they are back up here. It is on Tuesday night. Tomorrow night, right? They play tomorrow night against Washington, and then Thursday against Pittsburgh. Wednesday, they have that break for about a week, and then they play the Kraken out west, San Jose out west, LA out west, Anaheim out west. They got that little West Coast trip they always go on right around here. I think Pete Thompson went on that trip last year. Or was that the year before where he 2 years ago when he went like back trip packing around? All right, Mike Yeo, appreciate him. Good conversation. Love the conversation in regards to Carter Hart. I think that was the highlight of the conversation, really. That and his wife buying the Christmas presents for her from him. John, Geoff Kerr is on the other side. Playoff implications tonight. Eagles, Washington, his thoughts on that now. Did the NFL do the right thing? That and more. CBS Sports, Geoff Kerr, coming up. Call Jenkins for heating and air conditioning installation service and maintenance, plumbing and drain cleaning service, 609-641-6440 or JenkinsPlumbingHeating.com. Uh, 332 Sports Bass. Geoff Kerr's in the house. We're going to talk a little NFL. What a wild Sunday. Even with no Eagles, there was a ton of things that kind of affected the playoff scenarios. We're going to go over them right now with CBS Sports NFL writer Geoff Kerr right now on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Good to catch up with Mike Yo, the Flyers head coach, and now Geoff Kerr to go back to the NFL, which was a interesting Sunday. But I'll tell you what, Geoff, forget the Sunday. The games tonight and tomorrow have huge impacts on the way these standings are going to look. I mean, the 5 o'clock game, you've got Cleveland. If they win, they're going to go from 9th to 4th. I don't know. I think Cincinnati will push everybody down a couple spots and still be in the playoff mix. We can get into that. If Vegas wins, that makes that AFC wildcard even crazier. If Minnesota wins, that will make the NFC wildcard a mess until Philadelphia and Washington play, and that could change how everything kind of unfolds. So what's the biggest takeaway in the wild card race, the NFC wildcard race from yesterday?
For me, Mike, honestly, I think it's San Francisco gaining ground. Getting that win over Atlanta, and the Eagles kind of needed that. Honestly, I don't want San Francisco to be in this massive cluster with all these teams. Once they got to 7-6, I'm like, okay, this is clearly going to be a playoff team. So let's get them in the playoffs. And they had a convincing 31-13 win over Atlanta yesterday. 49ers are looking really, really good, Mike. And they're 8-6 now. I think they're in the driver's seat for a playoff spot.
Yep.
In a way, they're kind of a dark horse for the NFC West, if you think about it. Depending on how Seattle does tomorrow night against the Rams. Again, that's another big one, too, if you're looking at the grand scheme of things. So, Seattle could beat the Rams, and all of a sudden, the Cardinals are 10-4, the Rams are 9-5, San Francisco's 8-6. San Francisco's got a lot of work to do. But I think they're a lock for the playoffs right now. Minnesota tonight's going to be a big one. You got to hope for Chicago to kind of upset them, which can happen. But
my preseason NFC West pick right here, preseason San Francisco.
Mine was Arizona.
I had them win in the West. I like that San Francisco team getting healthy, coming back. I love the weapons. I actually, in my week 1 Fine 5, had San Francisco as my number 4 team. In my Fine 5. I really liked them a lot this year. Now, they had injuries, they had some disappointment, but I agree with what you're saying. I think they are going to be the 6th seed, and that means that 7 seed is still way up in the air. Right now, the current 6-7 seed is New Orleans. How did that game last night really affect what's happening moving forward?
Yeah, and you know what, Mike? I was going to mention the Saints as the crazy kind of scenario because we didn't think they were going to beat the Bucs. Not with Taysom Hill at quarterback, and we didn't think they'd score enough for him. Well, guess what? 9 points was more than enough to score for him. 3 points was more than enough. But yeah, it kind of makes everything a little bit crazier. Again, when they were in a tiebreaker with Atlanta owned the tiebreaker because they beat Atlanta. Well, they still have to. I'm sorry that Atlanta beat the Saints, but the Saints get to play them again. And again, it all depends how the Eagles-Washington game plays out because the Eagles beat the Saints. The Saints don't have too many tiebreakers here. They have to make sure they get ahead of everybody, and their conference record ain't too great. But right now, I'm not worried about them yet, but they're a factor now because they beat a team like Tampa Bay.
Hey, it's funny you say that because we were almost all saying, the Saints aren't really in this thing because we figured we were just chalking them up for a loss. They go and win, and they win impressively. So now they're the 7. What happens if Minnesota wins tonight? Would they then jump over New Orleans?
As far as I know, yeah. I've been focusing on the AFC so much. The NFC, that 7-7 thing's just crazy. I'm just looking at the Washington-Philadelphia perspective. But as far as I am aware, I believe Minnesota would get the 7 if they win tonight.
Okay. So Minnesota, I think you're right, by the way. I think you're right. Minnesota would jump over New Orleans. But then the question would be, if Washington wins or if Philadelphia wins, how does that change things? Depending on who wins the game tomorrow and gets themselves to 7-7. I think Washington would jump over Minnesota, but I don't think Philadelphia would jump over Minnesota.
Yeah, so Minnesota, if they win, they will jump the Saints. I just looked it up. They'll have a better conference record. They'll be 5-4. The Saints are 4-4. So we got that. So we got that in there. Now, if Philadelphia wins, I got to look at Philadelphia's conference record here. they will be 5-4 with Minnesota. So they will not jump Minnesota. So you want Minnesota to lose tonight.
Obviously.
But obviously you want the Eagles to win because then that kind of eliminates Washington because the Eagles will have the tiebreaker over them. But Washington wins, they're still ahead of Minnesota and the Saints. So if it's a three-way, I believe they go conference record, and Washington will have the best conference record of all three of them because they'll be 6-3 if Washington wins.
So a lot of wild card NFC implications between now, tonight with Minnesota and Chicago. Chicago is really the only team that's playing over the next, these bunch of games that has nothing. I mean, even if Seattle wins, they get to 6-8, and they're only a game behind the mix, playing some good football.
Yeah, you know what's crazy, Mike? I wrote Seattle off. I don't even know who they play the rest of the year. I gotta be honest with you, because when they were playing the Texans, I'm like, well, they should win that game. They'll stay in it, but I just picked it.
They play at the Rams, the Bears, the Lions, and at the Cardinals.
Oh, boy, is that a favorable schedule.
Right.
So they need to win this game. And you know what? I just did the preview for Seattle and the Rams for CBS, and I picked the Seahawks. I said, you know what? This year's been crazy. Why don't we just make it crazier here? Let's get them to 6.
There you go.
And then you look at their schedule, and you're absolutely right. And by the way, I think everybody in Philadelphia is going to be a huge Dolphins fan next week because, one, the Dolphins have a chance to go over 500 for the first time since week 1, and they were 1-7. No 1-7 team has ever gotten to 7-7 since the 16-game schedule was invented. The 1974 Jets ended up 7-7, but that was a 14-game season, so they were done.
Hold on. Why would Philly fans be rooting for Miami?
Just get rid of the Saints. It's honestly just get rid of them.
Because they're playing the Saints. Okay.
Yeah,
because I keep saying all these tweets about people saying, oh, well, the draft picks aren't as good as you thought. Well, I said, who's complaining about having free draft picks? Like, this doesn't make any sense.
Well, this is what, this is what I was arguing with. I didn't even try to argue because Eagles fans are crazy. They get 3 first-round draft picks, and they're like, well, it doesn't matter how he's picking them. Or, they're getting higher and higher by the week. I'm like, so what?
Right. I pointed out Saturday that, Carson Wentz has gone over the 75%. Well, the pick's going to be 20. Who cares? I said, you want the pick or not? I mean, here, give it back to Indianapolis and say, hey, you take the pick because it's like saying, here's a bag of free money. And you say, it's too heavy.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I say? The old SpongeBob meme. I'm getting back in line. So, yeah, that's how I'm looking at it. Like, I'm happy they have 3 first round picks. By the way, our friend Rob Motti, I actually, I haven't heard anything in relative to his report, but I kind of agree with him that it wouldn't shock me if the Eagles would use one of them to kind of get another first round pick in 2023.
Agree.
And restock the cupboard because they're going to have a bunch of draft collateral there.
All right, let's look at the NFC and what happened yesterday. Tampa lost. Arizona lost. I don't know. How did Arizona? What happened in that game?
Mike, that was one of those games where I just turned it on because I saw Detroit was up so much. Arizona couldn't stop Craig Reynolds. He pretty much was on Detroit's practice squad for most of the year. He was really good in the preseason. Craig Reynolds is absolute proof that it doesn't matter who you put at running back if you have guys that can run block. And Amon-Ra St. Brown's been a really good player for them the second half of the year. Jared Goff played really well. I just think Arizona had a lot of bad penalties in that game. Like they had a couple rough in the passer penalties on Jared Goff, and they had a chance to get off the field. And, it was just a calamity of errors. And everybody's on Cliff Kingsbury now because, here we go, the Arizona late season collapse. And they got a tough schedule coming up. They got the Colts on Christmas, and they got the Cowboys on the 2nd. It's going to be a big couple weeks for Arizona. I'm not worried about them yet, but luckily, they're not in the position Minnesota's in when they lost to Detroit.
Geoff, they have now let the door open for the Rams. They've split, and if the Rams win tomorrow night against Seattle, they'll both be 10-4, and then basically it's a foot race to the end line. So Arizona went from the 1 seed to possibly now not winning its division, and now you've opened up the door for Dallas to get the 2 seed, which is where they are right now, which affects the Eagles because if they play in week 18, Dallas could now be playing for something much better than we thought.
Yeah, and you know what? This is where you got to root for Arizona a little bit because Arizona can kind of put this team away. I mean, and I still don't think Dallas is that great. I mean, if you want to be honest, Mike, I just think they're playing bad teams in the NFC East. They're playing Washington. They're playing the Giants, and it helps them. Look, it's absolutely helping them at the end of the year that they play pretty much the same schedule the Eagles and the Giants and Washington are playing. They are the class of the division, and it's going to help them get the 12 or 13 wins, which might be good enough to be the number 1 seed. I thought Cowboys fans were a little bit crazy when they were talking about this about 2 weeks ago. I'm like, well, hold on, beat the Saints first. And now it sounds really possible that it can happen.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. All right. The AFC side of things. I don't even know that we can, have the ability to figure this all out. But if Cleveland wins,
somehow I am.
All right. Well, if Cleveland wins tonight, they go from 9-4, correct?
Correct.
All right. What happens to Cincinnati?
Cincinnati will drop, but they will still be in the playoffs.
Okay, so they have the tiebreaker over Indy, LA, but one of those teams, I would imagine.
So this is how the tiebreaker. I had to get this up here. So the Colts are right now 5th, right? Chargers are 6th.
Yes.
Now, Cincinnati, they will go down, but they'll go behind the Colts, but they'll be ahead of the Chargers.
So they would be 6. And then the Chargers go from 6 to 7. Buffalo's out.
Yeah, Buffalo's out. How
Wow.
crazy is that? I think Buffalo is in excellent shape to make the playoffs, and with 3 games to go, they're going to be out. How crazy is that?
Well, that's right. So if Cleveland wins tonight, they would go to 4. Cincinnati would go from 4 to 6. LA would drop to 7. Buffalo would be out. What happens if Vegas wins tonight? I know they're not in, but that puts them a game behind the mix, and that makes a clouded mess. And then, of course, it even gets crazier when you put into the fact Pittsburgh has a tie, and I'm sure that's going to loom, because how many times over the years has the team with the tie made out because of their tie?
The Eagles have done it. The Eagles made the playoffs in 2008 because they made it in because of the tie. And I said this, I think, when I first did the playoff standings in Week 10, I said that tie is going to be the Steelers' best friend or the worst enemy. But honestly, it might get them in if they have around a similar mark. I still say 10 wins get you in no matter what. But the Steelers get the 9. They might get it. So, by the way, your initial question with the Raiders will jump from where are they now? I got to double check.
They're 13.
Yeah, they are 13. So they will jump ahead of the Dolphins to 11.
Okay.
Dolphins will fall back to 12. And Denver will go to 13. Dolphins hold it over Denver right now. And then it's the Raiders. So the Raiders will jump up to 11, but they'll still be in it. It's going to be hard for them, but they'll still be in it. And honestly, Vegas got a shot, Mike. I mean, with all of Cleveland's issues, they got a shot tonight.
Well, that game, you got 7-6 against 6-7. I mean, hey, look, nobody is really a clear cut in that. And then the later game tonight, it's Minnesota and Chicago. We'll have both games on 97.3 ESPN. They all have playoff implications. And then tomorrow, both games at 7 o'clock, Philadelphia, Washington. I want to get a thought on that real quick, because as we saw over the weekend, Washington activated a bunch of guys from the COVID list on Saturday. It was almost like, NFL, you caved, and we're going to shove it in your face. And now Philadelphia has a couple guys going on. So does Washington. So Washington guys got a couple guys back. They lost Sheriff, which is a big loss for them.
But coaches too.
They got a lot of coaches. Don't know what's going on at quarterback for them.
Yeah, from what it looks, it's Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke aren't. I guess they're not going to travel with the team, but they're going to get a test in Philadelphia. I guess that's how they're going to do it. It's going to be weird to pick this game. I mean, I'm still picking the Eagles, but it's going to be weird just to see who's out there for what. How do you game plan? Do you game plan for Taylor Heineke? Do you prepare for Kyle Allen? Do you prepare for Kyle Shermer? Do you prepare for Garrett Gilbert, or who was going to be the starter? It's going to be very interesting on Tuesday. I'll say that.
Well, this has got to be one of the most bizarre games to get ready for. You're thinking you're playing Sunday against Garrett Gilbert and a basically completely different defensive line. 2 days later, you might be playing a different quarterback, a completely different defensive line. Philadelphia is in a really tough spot here. And then, of course, they're going to have to play again on Sunday.
I'll say this, too. If the Eagles are any good, they'll beat Washington. I don't want to say handily, but they'll beat them, and they'll beat the Giants. And Eagles fans are crying, and I get why you are, but if you think your team's any good, I don't know if they are or not.
Here's the problem. I agree with what you're saying. Here's the issue. The margin of error in this league and the parity is so small to have any sort of disadvantage, i.e. playing on a short week. That makes the margin that much smaller and possibly
and I
surpass
will agree with people. I don't think the Eagles should be playing on a short week. If anything, I thought maybe they should have postponed from Sunday to Monday. I think I would have been more okay with that because it's sort of a normal week then.
I know the NFL, look, they caved. They didn't want to lose games. They didn't want 3 forfeits in the same weekend. I get all that. But hey, now you have a situation where Landon Dickerson might not play tomorrow. The Eagles could now be affected. They didn't guarantee by kicking the can down the road that you're going to get anywhere closer to safety. That's all.
Yeah, and you know what? What was the NFL thinking? The Omicron variant is going to go away in 2 days? I don't know.
That's what I mean. You're kicking the can down the road doesn't ensure anything other than, all right, they might not have enough guys. They had enough guys. They just weren't going to be competitive, and that was the problem, I guess. I mean, look, they did what they did, and I think moving forward, they're going to say, look, if you're not symptomatic and you're vaccinated, you can play. We're not even going to test you anymore, so we don't go through this whole protocol situation.
Yeah, I think that's what I think. Last week they were just stuck between a rock and a hard place. They didn't know what to do, and I think they wanted to move the Cleveland game. And I'm sure someone like Washington said, "Well, hold on a second, you were going to move their game. Why don't you move our game?" And then the Rams got in. It's one of those you can't give way for one team because then everybody's going to ask. It's just one of those. It's a mess. I don't see them moving any other games the rest of the year. I was asked this on Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City today. Do you think the NFL will move any more games? I said, no, I don't think so. I mean, you can't put anything past them, but I just don't see it.
All right, Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports. Of course, we got the doubleheader tonight at 5. So Geoff was kind enough to move up a little bit to talk more football with us here on the Sports Bash. All right, Geoff, enjoy the double dip.
Yeah, I can't wait. Honestly, Mike, I'm excited for both these games tonight. One, because
we just laid it out, man. We got every game's got some meaning towards it.
You know what? This league is absolutely crazy. I did not like the 7 seed and the 14-team playoff at first, but we're going to get something like this every year. I'm all for it.
Well, you're right. That did add a lot of in the NFC. The AFC is still crazy from 5, 6, and 7. The NFC, it looks like it's a battle for just the 7. All right, Geoff, we'll see you Wednesday.
Yep, sounds good. See you Wednesday, Mike.
Geoff Kerr, CBS Sports, and he is brought to you by the expert solar team of New Jersey, EMT Solar Roofing, Solar Guardian. Start your solar journey today. Learn more. Visit espnsolar.com. All right, we're taking you till 5 tonight. We've got the doubleheader Monday Night Football game. That kicks off at 5 o'clock. So we'll have that for you live on 97.3 ESPN. We're your home for football. Eagles tomorrow night. We got you live starting at 6 tomorrow. For more, go to our website, 97.3ESPN.com. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, and City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is ready to go. We are ready to bring you another edition of Football at 4 as the Eagles off tonight. They will take on the Washington football team. We just got news that another Eagle has been put on the reserve COVID list. That is Andre Dillard. Not earth-shattering news, but in case somebody got hurt, Jordan Mailata most specifically in the game, or Mailata himself comes down with I don't know. I mean, I haven't things changed? Have they changed any of the rules that will take effect for this game on Tuesday night, Geoff?
No.
Or will it be following the game on Tuesday night?
Following the game on Tuesday night is when the new rules will take effect. So
All
they are still beholden to the old ones right now.
So let me ask you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's a little alarming because it's 2 offensive linemen in 2 days, and these guys are typically around each other. I know that they've been beholden to newer protocols, and all last week the Eagles were taking stronger protocols, but obviously if 2 offensive linemen get it in 2 days, you do worry. You mentioned Jordan Mailata. I would worry about any of the starting offensive linemen at this point being.
I brought this scenario up earlier, Geoff, is that they essentially didn't play the game on Sunday because Washington was down its entire defensive line. Well, on Saturday, magically, they were all activated. The entire defensive line was all activated and ready to go. Well, then you find out that Landon Dickerson, he goes on the list, which means, hey, there's a potential at the Eagles' offensive line. You just could go from their defensive line not being prepared and ready to play to your offensive line. Then what do? Do they just not kick the can down the road and say, sorry, we screwed up and I'm not trying to cry for the Eagles, but this is why moving the game, caving in and moving the game turns into a possibly even bigger problem.
Yeah, I think that no matter what, there's no right answer. I mean, there was just nothing that could be done that's going to satisfy everyone. I think there's a reasonable argument or complaint, I should say, for every single scenario that could have happened. It would be very unfortunate if the Eagles lost between now and the start of tomorrow's game a bunch of guys, but it's kind of the world we're living in. And Washington, despite the additions that they have got, I mean, I think you saw the announcement, 7 coaches aren't going to be able to coach. So they're still feeling the effects. And as of right now, as you and I talk,
Sheriff as well, by the way.
Brandon Sheriff, right. They lost Brandon Sheriff. And as you and I speak, I mean, I don't think anything has changed with their quarterback situation. So it sounds like it's either going to be Gilbert or Garrett Gilbert or Pat Shurmur's kid, which is unbelievable.
Right. I mean, look, without saying that, I don't know that you're right. I don't think there was a right or wrong answer here. I don't want to say they should have made them forfeit the game, but would it have just been better to say, look, you got to get a team out on that field. If you don't want to forfeit the game, you got to get a team out on that field.
Well, if they had forfeited the game, the problem is that affects a lot of people, right? If they forfeit the game,
which I'm not advocating. Look, I didn't.
No, I know.
I'm going through that scenario. The Eagles, right? I'm not complaining that the Eagles, they got screwed. It should have been a forfeit. The fact that at the beginning of the year they told teams they were going to forfeit,
right?
I didn't see that happening because of the money involved around each game.
Exactly. If they had forfeited, nobody would have made any money. None of the players, and I don't think any of the players.
Wasn't there a scenario that was brought up that said the team that could not field a team would forfeit the game and that the opposing team would have had to pay the players?
Yes. Yeah. In retrospect, that seemed like a big scare tactic that never really materialized. I don't think that was ever truly bargained into the agreement between the two sides. It was one of those things that was proposed, and I don't think it was ever ironclad.
All right. So obviously this is gone just sideways for the league. They have games tonight, double dip tonight. You got the 2 games tomorrow. Philadelphia will then play again on Sunday, as will Washington, by the way. So they're both kind of in a precarious situation here. But, Philadelphia, I want to ask you this, Mosher, because when we talked on Wednesday, you said it was about 50-50 for Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any information? Has it gotten out whether he would have been ready to play Sunday? And do we feel that he will definitively be ready to play tomorrow night?
I feel a lot stronger that he'll be ready to play tomorrow. Now, he'll be cleared to play tomorrow night and will play tomorrow night than I did he would play Sunday, despite Nick Sirianni saying that he was a full go and at one point he was listed as a full participant, it was my understanding that he was not taking the full speed type of game reps that you would normally take as a full participant, and that there was still throughout the week some discomfort and some concern about the ankle and the heel and the whole area, right? So I know people are upset, but I mean, I really think actually in the extra 2 days that gave them a better chance of Jalen Hurts being able to play tomorrow night. Now, the big question is he 100%? Where is he? Is he still in pain? Is he going to be able to run the way he used to? How much running has he done since spraining the injury to test it? These are all questions that remain unanswered. And I think, well, I know Nick Sirianni said, Minshew is still taking reps and they're getting him ready because he may have to play whether he starts or not.
Right. Obviously, depending on which side of the ledger you're on, did you want Hurts to play or not? You might have said, I'd rather than play Sunday, and he wasn't able to go. But that neither here nor there. If he's ready to go.
If they played Sunday, Mike, you could have been the quarterback and the Eagles were going to win that game. I mean, like if they played on Sunday, it doesn't matter who's playing quarterback.
I said this about the Colts. They've played 8 games where they didn't need Carson Wentz. They could have put me in and handed the ball off, and they could have saved the draft pick. There's no need to.
Absolutely.
He was 5 of 12 for 58 yards. Why? I mean, there's no need to waste those snaps. What do we know about Landon Dickerson? Definitively out. Don't know.
Well, no, I guess it's not yes, definitively for this game, unless, I mean, the old rule was if you produce 2 negative tests in a 24-hour span of each, you can get back on the field. So he was put on the list Sunday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yesterday.
And by the way, he did not practice on Sunday. He did not take place in the walkthrough. So even though the announcement came later in the day, the walkthrough was earlier in the day. So that tells you that even if the Eagles had played Sunday, he would not have been able to play anyway. So this is not like an additional tax that the Eagles have to play for moving their game. He wouldn't have been able to play Sunday.
Right.
Because he wasn't even out with them in the morning walkthrough. Because they get the results early. They just don't announce it as soon as they get it. They wait until the end of the day when they make their transactions.
Well, this is the same with Washington. This was tweeted out about an hour ago. Tyler Heineke and Kyle Allen will not be on the transaction wire today, but the deadline for them to test out of the protocols and be available to play is 4:00 on Tuesday or 3 hours prior to kickoff, which I would imagine, Moshe, would be the same deadline time for Dickerson, right?
Yes, I would imagine that would be the case. By the way, that's pretty rough if you're, I don't know, starting a pregame show that day at 4:00 p.m. I'm trying to do all the matchups.
Well,
I've been hitting the delete button on my script for the last 3 or 4 days.
Geoff, I mean, to get ready for this game, I mean, when Adam came on Friday, that's when the news essentially, it came out like a half hour before Adam did football at 4 with us on Friday. And it's like, how are we, Adam sends me notes that he wants to talk about different things. I said, well, what are we talking about? I mean, we don't know who's playing tackle, guard. I mean, nothing. There's no matchups in this game. Like, if you're Nick Sirianni right now, who did you get ready for?
That's a great question. I mean, are you looking at like, where did Shermer's kid go to school? He went to what, Vanderbilt, I think? Or did he go to Florida? I forget where Kyle Shermer went to college, but I guess
Kyle
you're gonna have
Shermer is a Vanderbilt.
Yeah, it was Vanderbilt. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's what you're looking at. And you're looking at the
Jay Cutler from Vanderbilt, though, Harry.
Yeah, there you go. Jordan Matthews, Vanderbilt. So you're looking at probably some tape from Gilbert last year.
Guy the Eagles had in training camp. Didn't he play at Vanderbilt?
They probably did. They
he transferred to Georgia, but he never played at Georgia.
It was a running back, wasn't it?
No, it was a quarterback.
Forget who it was. Oh, was it a quarterback? You're not talking about Newman, right?
Oh, he went to Wake Forest.
Yeah, Newman was
same thing. Black and gold, terrible.
Pretty much.
Jamie Newman.
So Gilbert played for the Cowboys last year. He actually played decently in a couple. He may have won a game for the Cowboys last year, if I'm not mistaken.
Because, if you remember, they played Ben DiNucci against the Eagles, and then the next week, I think they went to Gilbert, and you're like, why didn't they use Gilbert?
If they would have won that game if they started Gilbert against the Eagles, turned the ball over, I think 4 times in that game and still won. So they would have won that game if Gilbert started.
I mean, the preparation for this week for you, me, Nick Sirianni has got to be brutal for both sides, though. I mean, you don't know if Hurts is playing, if Minshew's playing.
Yeah.
You've got all sorts of problems on their defensive front. Now their defensive front seems to be back. I mean, getting ready for this game has to be one of the most bizarre ones, period. But let's start
I think
with
for
this.
both teams, Mike, it's you just do what you do type game. It's like less about them and more what do you do well.
Well, did you watch any of the In the Arena with Brady?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
I watched. So Saturday, I watched like the first 3 or 4 episodes, and in that, to kind of piggyback off your thought, they lost that first game that year when they cut Lawyer Malloy and he went to Buffalo in week 1. Buffalo beat them 31-0. They played them in the last week of the year, and the Patriots end up beating them 31-0, the exact same score. But they said over the course of the season, instead of watching, they watched the tendencies of just what they were running and said like they really caught on to a couple of things that they didn't see in that first game and ended up just whipping them. That's what you're going to have to do here. You're just going to have to watch film of the tendencies of what their coach calls as opposed to who you are game planning for.
Right. And a lot of that is not rocket scientists at this point. We know that much like the Eagles, the Washington football team was a bad team through 7 games, and they got better once they started running the ball more, leaning on Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissick. And you have to imagine they're going to be doing the same thing, trying to establish the run and then set up whatever they can for Taylor Heineke. I'm sorry, for whoever plays quarterback to be able to, get a little play action to McLaurin, who will play, and we'll see what other weapons are available. But it's not going to be, in my opinion, I don't think either of these teams are very aesthetically pretty on offense. They just kind of do what they do and grind it out.
Well, and then Sheriff being out for them, I mean, that's a big advantage for Philly. I mean, he's an all-pro guard. That's one area where
he's been hurt. He's been playing pretty poorly this year, but it's still obviously
it's an area where Philly has a strength, though, is Fletcher and Hargrave, and now you're back. You're down to another guard in that spot. So that's one spot, But if Dickerson goes out, what's that? Suopeta?
Yeah, it's basically the inverse of. I mean, it's the same thing for the Eagles, right? Because you're down to your 4th and 5th guards in Nate Herbig and Sua Opeta, or maybe they start LaRaven Clark. I don't know. I doubt it, but against Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, who are back. So these teams, I would say Allen and Payne are as good, if not better, actually, than the tandem of Hargrave and Cox. At least this year, they've been better, and so both teams are going to be working backup guards against, Pro Bowl and all-pro caliber defensive tackles.
I got on that note, though, Geoff, I mean, just think about last year, the offensive line issues this team had, how much more equipped they are, and they've done a really good job of refixing that line and adding depth. I mean, how many teams can handle being on their 3rd right guard, their 2nd or 3rd left guard? I mean, realistically, they had Dickerson playing right guard. They moved them to left after Sayamala got hurt. So they've gone through about 5 or 6 different guards this year.
They certainly have. But now they're at a kind of a critical mass here where, it's not. I know Herbig has had experience and has played well in spots. He doesn't have to worry about snapping right now, so that's a good thing. But Herbig and Opeta, compared to what you would expect to have against that Washington defensive front, is not good. I mean, you're probably not. Your quarterback's probably going to be impacted by that. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, oddly, I think the injury reports that came out today for both these teams, Philly's was actually longer than Washington's was at this point. But, I think most of the guys for Philly are probably going to play that are on that list where Washington. What's the status of McLaurin? Didn't he have a concussion issue?
Yes, he did. I believe he made it back to practice by the end of the weekend, and it's looking like he's going to play.
All right, so
he merely averages 18 yards a catch against the Eagles in his short career, though. So,
well, I was gonna say, guys like him, McKissick, they have really hurt the Eagles in the last couple of years.
Yes, they have, and it's going to be. Darius Slay is playing really well, so that's been. You wonder. Again, this is going to be a game where I think you just do what you do. So that is kind of calls into question what's Gannon's game plan going to be. Is he going to be aggressive the way he? You remember we talked about this leading up to the Jets game last year or 2 years, I forget now, when it was 2 years ago, when Jim Schwartz smelled blood against the Jets, when they had to start Luke Falk, Jim Schwartz, who never likes to blitz either, just went after Luke Falk. Remember Skandrick blitzing and all this crazy stuff. Now, will Jonathan Gannon do that if the quarterback tomorrow is Kyle Shermer or Gilbert, or will he just say, I think my front four can get to these guys, especially with their beat up offensive line, and I'll just play soft zone. And I'm not saying either one is right. I mean, I think you would like to see them go after the quarterback in this situation, but we'll have to see what he chooses.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, Geoff. I think forget about the matchups and who's doing what in this game. I think you have to keep an eye on the Eagles' offensive line situation with Dickerson and now Dillard going on the COVID list, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes,
that's
definitely.
essentially what could be the biggest story here. And then, of course, the Hurts thing. You mentioned you think Hurts will play, but I guess that's still something that's not definitive. You got to keep an eye on. But it looks like Sanders and Howard will go, correct?
Yeah, and we haven't really seen Sanders and Howard in a game together since it was, I want to say, he got hurt in that game. That's the game Jordan Howard got hurt in. So what are we talking about? New Orleans, right? And then Howard got hurt right before halftime, or right after halftime. So we still haven't really seen these two guys play together in a full game, like a
Well, that
true
means
thunder and lightning.
somebody's good. Last time Gainwell was the inactive guy.
That's correct.
I
imagine he will be inactive again.
Because I feel like he's got a little bit bigger of a role since he's been active, obviously, because he's now active. But I feel like he's actually scored a touchdown, caught a pass. I mean, he's done a little bit more while he's been active.
I think that, and this is just my take on it. If somebody could be right, it could be Gainwell. But I think, when you've got your number 1 and 2 as Sanders and Howard, and you're looking for a change-up guy or a multifaceted type of guy to be your number 3, these are division games and they're playoff implications, and you want guys who kind of can do everything, right? Boston Scott is pretty decent in blitz pickup. He's obviously good catching the ball out of the backfield, so he can do what Gainwell does in that 2-minute drill. But if you go back to the Jets game, that touchdown that Goddard caught, the 25-yarder, was a really nice rub route between Goddard and Boston Scott. I mean, honestly, the Jets just played it awfully. I don't know if that would ever happen against a real defense, but the point is they executed it well. And I'm not sure that Gainwell, as a rookie, and this isn't a knock on him, just as a rookie, does all those little things like the pass pro and the blitz pickup and the ability to run the right rub route with the tight end consistently enough so that you want to trust him in these big late game, division game, playoff implication spots. Whereas you have Boston Scott, who's been there and done that, because, every mistake is critical in these kind of games.
Yep. And Quez Watkins back.
Yeah, Quez Watkins back, which is really good because, he is a shot play guy, and he has been sort of a reliable when the ball goes his way. He can pluck it out of the air. He's shown that. And without him, I was wondering how they were going to fill that void. Were they going to be more 2 tight end offense, or were they just going to plug Hightower or Greg Ward in there? I mean, again, these are early big kind of games, and you need guys who show up in the big moments, or at least that you trust. And it'd be hard to pick a name out of there, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, that you really trust to make a play.
Yeah, real quick, just this whole thing, I mean, how it's kind of gone down. The Eagles were not happy about this, right? This was not something that the Eagles nor Seattle was happy about.
Yeah, I mean, of course the Eagles wanted to play. They're not the team that had the outbreak. They were ready to go. It was a home game. A lot of things change now. And so there were early complaints about it. But if you notice, like, the statement was very vague from them. And there hasn't been much coming out, terse but vague. Hasn't much come out since. And that's because what are they supposed to say? Jeffrey Lurie is part of the ownership group that agreed to these, and the players are part of the NFLPA group that agreed to this was a lot of people are blaming the NFL and not realizing this was actually, from what I gather, more of an NFLPA decision, right? The NFL would have played these games, right? What do they have to lose? Nothing. They get the money, they get the ad, they got nothing to lose. Now they have to shake up their whole schedule, but the Players Association was like, dude, we got all these, sick players. This isn't right. And, there's some argument to that, but the Players Association is not a monolith either. If you took every single player and had them vote on it, it would probably be like, 55-45, because a lot of the guys, let's be honest, it wasn't about health and safety for a lot of players. It was about the automatic win. The Eagles would have all voted to play on Sunday, and everybody on Washington would have voted to move the game. And they would have all said, the Washington guys would have said health and safety. Right. And the Eagles guys said, no, you're worried about competitive advantage. And the Washington guys would have said, yes, so are you. I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there were some Raiders guys, just to take the Eagle part, Raiders guys were tweeting out like, hey, I followed the rules. I listened to this, and then you're telling me we're not playing. I mean, so
it sucks. They're right, but it
Yeah.
sucks. But what are you going to do? Do you want a free win? I mean, because that's not right either. I mean, if the Washington had played on Sunday, that's not right. I understand. I feel like the person's most affected is the fan who maybe flies in from a different state and spends all that money on it. But other than that, I mean, that's really not a game that should have been. That would have been really, really not right.
Well, we'll leave with this. We don't know who's playing quarterback. We don't know what's going on, but we do know there will be a kickoff tomorrow night at 7 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN. The Inside the Birds pregame will be at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. That's correct.
All right. They'll have that on the Inside the Birds social media platforms. As we know, though, New Orleans currently is the 7.
Yeah.
Minnesota plays tonight. If they win, they will become the 7.
Yeah.
If Philadelphia wins or Washington wins, that would also change the whole situation because I think Washington would then jump over Minnesota, but Philadelphia would not jump over Minnesota.
Yeah, it's all convoluted right now. But I can't tell you, all the permutations that happened and may happen tonight if Minnesota wins none of them really favored the Eagles other than, I guess, Atlanta losing. But they lost to San Francisco, who's ahead of them. So that didn't help them out either.
Yeah, the one team that Philly's got problems with is Minnesota because they've beaten Atlanta, they've beaten New Orleans, they beat Carolina. They're all the way out of it. So, and then, of course, they have they can handle their own business with Washington. But Minnesota's the one that is a problem. San Francisco would be a problem, but they're a game up on you now. So Minnesota is the one that is the problem right now.
I do think New Orleans could be very problematic because they're, it depends on what the Eagles do tomorrow night. But if the Eagles lose, New Orleans is a game up, and they have a very easy schedule also.
You just beat Tampa, too. You're starting to feel good.
Yeah, and their defense has been good. I mean, I know they looked bad against the Eagles that one game, but for the most part, what they really needed was somebody who could move the chains better than Trevor Siemian, and Taysom Hill does it just enough throwing and running to make them a little bit more formidable. They're scary. They're sort of like the Eagles they have a good offensive line. They have a good defensive line. The quarterback can move the chains through the air and running now, and they're one of those teams that can catch a little fire here at the end of the year.
Hey, we always say, like the NFL, you get to a certain set, and then like the last 3 weeks, everything gets flipped upside down still, right?
That's
all
right.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. The guys will have the pregame tomorrow night. Of course, tomorrow, Andrew will have whatever matchups we think we might have. He'll break those down for us here on Football at 4. And Jeff's back on Wednesday to kind of break down what we saw on Tuesday night. All right, man. Take care.
All right, Mike. Have a good one.
That's Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. All right, when we come back, thoughts on Week 15 in the NFL. Paul Hudrick's going to wrap up the show, talk a little Sixers in their whole situation. Are they going to play tonight? We'll get the latest with Paul. And then we'll have the kickoff of Cleveland and Vegas here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I haven't really checked the text board today. That's my fault. But if you want to send a text in, I'll address it on the other side. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. If you have a message on the free mobile app, if you're listening on the app, you can always message us through the app as well. Multiple ways to contact the show. Get your text in now. I'll address it next. 609-403-0973. 4:33 Sports Bash, couple text messages. Hey, Mike, I might have missed it, but what is Hurts' status for tomorrow? His status is he will play. He is not even on the injury report the last I looked. I do not believe that he is any injury designation.
Everyone on the injury report has no designation of questionable or being out. They're all listed as fully participants. And as I wrote at 97.3 ESPN.com, it's unusual that a team doesn't give you a status officially, but if they're not saying he's out, I'm assuming he's in.
Zach Berman, 12 minutes ago. Jalen Hurts has no injury status. He is going to play Tuesday. How's that? To answer that gentleman's question.
Isn't that what I said?
I'm just saying. There you go. Well, yours was a more convoluted as to why he had no status. He just has no status. Therefore, he's not hurt.
Right.
He is no longer injured. He has no injury designation whatsoever. He will play tomorrow.
Right.
Now, as Mosher said, if this was Sunday, he was a little unsure whether he would be ready to play.
I think everyone would be unsure because of the fact that Nick Sirianni said on Friday before all the news came down, if we go back in the time machine, he said that Hurts was taking most of the first team reps at practice. And at the time, he was hopeful that Hurts would start on Sunday.
Right. Let's get a couple more text messages in. Geoff, by the way, always thanks. This show is getting me through a very hectic Monday. Hey, we're doing the best we can. It's hectic for all of us here. We had the Eagles news happened to us Friday, which threw our weekends up into a shebanger. Is that a word?
I have no idea. Let me go look it up.
Shebanger. It's not a word. I made that up. That was a rhetorical ask of whether or not that was a word or not. There's no way shebanger is a word, but it sounds like something that would mess your weekend up.
Well, there is the word shebang is a word.
Shebang, but shebanger. It's just like a more enforceful shebang. When the Sixers canceled their game, that was another thing. I mean, it was just like, are you kidding me now? Now the Sixers are supposed to play tonight. We think.
We'll find out soon.
Well, they only have 6 healthy bodies. And we don't know if Embiid's ready to play or Maxi's ready to play or Danny Green. They have injuries. Cole from LBI on the text board. Mike, it looks like it's going to be Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl, and I think Rodgers is getting his second ring. I believe the Packers will get their LT, best pass rusher, and lockdown corner back and healthy for the playoffs. Well, Tampa Bay got some horrible news today. Godwin is
he's done.
Done. Goodwin, excuse me.
Goodwin, yeah.
Chris Goodwin done for the year, ACL. So last night they were awful. They had injuries. That's why they're letting Antonio Brown come back.
Yeah, they were saying that there's a possibility that Chris Godwin could come back for the playoffs some point.
They thought the injury was MCL sprain, not an ACL.
Correct. So there's a hope he could return. But like you said, they're letting Antonio Brown come back because, as Bruce Arians said, I'm doing what's best for the football team.
If Chris Goodwin I'm having that kind of day. If Goodwin is ready to come back or healthy enough to come back, I don't know that they let Antonio Brown come back.
It's very possible they don't. But then again, we may never know because, Mike, Antonio Brown is in Tampa because of Brady. He ain't there because of Bruce Arians.
Right. And I'm sure Bruce Arians is probably like, I don't need this guy around. I said that earlier in the season that, hey, he's the best receiver in football if he's right.
Correct.
And you saw that early on. And then, of course, this thing got in the way. And I don't know.
Listen, when he's good, he's really good. But when he ain't focused, when he's got other stuff going on, you want to steer clear.
All right, I want to tell you guys about something that you can win from 97.3 ESPN.com and the free mobile app. We want to hand you, along with Spirit Airlines, 2 free round-trip tickets from Atlantic City to Cancun. We're giving away a pair of tickets every day to win. Open the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app and tap on the Spirit button, and you can enter right now. All the rules and details on our website, on our mobile app, 97.3 ESPN. You can get it in the Apple Store or Google Play. Picture yourself soaking up fun in the sun in Cancun from Spirit and 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, Paul Hudrick on the Sixers. Will they play tonight? And if they do, who's available? That's next. All right, 4:44, getting ready to close out the show with Paul Hudrick. As we talked a lot of Eagles and their issues, the Sixers are also going through issues. Now, they have a game scheduled tonight in Boston. Will they play? We haven't heard any retort that they would or would not. They did sign Tyler Johnson, who about 3 years ago, I'm sure there was a lot of Sixers fans saying, we need to go get this guy, Tyler Johnson. Well, now they signed him because the NBA is essentially saying, hey, if you can play, sign anybody you want. Paul, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, Mike. Just trying to follow this like everybody else, man. It's an awful lot to take in.
Yeah. So to give us the details and the reasons, just to fill people in, because I think so many people have been so encapsulated by what happened in the NFL, movement there. The Sixers got canceled last night. Where the status of tonight's game is and why Tyler Johnson and Miles Powell are now Sixers.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sure looks like they're going to play this game because it looks like they're going to have you need 8 guys to play. And it looks like both teams are going to have 8 guys. Both teams have a couple guys questionable. I know for the Celtics, Tatum and Schroeder are both questionable. For the Sixers, Embiid, Maxey, Danny Green, they're all questionable. So we think we're going to have enough to play. So and here we are, 4:45, and that seems to be the case. But yeah, the deal is, Mike, as we all know, the NBA is just getting ravaged with all these guys in health and safety protocols. So the NBA and the Players Association came to this agreement where basically teams can sign guys to 10-day contracts, hardship contracts they're calling them, in order to fill in for the players that are in health and safety protocols. So with the Sixers having George Niang, Andre Drummond, Shake Milton all in those protocols, they're taking advantage by signing Tyler Johnson. As you said, 3 years ago, this is a pretty good signing, actually. He had a really nice career with the Miami Heat. He was a pretty solid little player. Point guard who doesn't turn the ball over a ton, can make threes, a decent player. Got traded to Phoenix and was really a disaster out there. Was pretty mediocre to poor in Brooklyn. I mean, he was okay. He was good enough to crack the rotation, I suppose, but not really impactful. I think what they needed was a player who, quite frankly, just, Shake Milton's down, right? Tyrese Maxey is the only thing you have on this team that resembles a point guard, and even he's questionable with that left quad contusion. So you need a guy who can dribble a basketball, and Tyler Johnson can do that. He's played in a bunch of NBA games. He's 29 years old. Is he going to light the world on fire? No, but he's steady. He can bring the ball up the basketball court without turning it over, get you into your offensive sets, and maybe hit a wide open 3. That's really all they're going to be asking him to do. And you mentioned Miles Powell. So the move over the weekend was the Sixers for a 2-way contract. They had Grant Riller under a 2-way deal. They waived him. Unfortunately, Riller just hasn't stayed healthy. I still like him as a player, as a prospect, but he just had his shoulder operation done. He's going to be out for some time. So with the Sixers, with these things going on and all these players, being put in the protocols, they need a 2-way guy flat out that can help them and that can play. So that's why they signed Powell, who is with the team in Boston, who could play tonight. Again, another warm body that can dribble a basketball. They need that. So, so that's where Powell's at. Powell's actually a guy I kind of like too. If anyone is a big fan of Big East basketball, probably saw him at Seton Hall. He's a scorer, man. He can put the ball in the hole. And he's aggressive. So he's a guy that potentially could help them for now. He's an intriguing guy to have down with the Blue Coats as well. So yeah, that's where we are, Mike. I mean, you might see, there's a chance you could see one or both of these guys tonight, as crazy as this season is going to be.
Right. So if you're listening to Tom McGinnis call out names you never heard of, they may be Sixers. Now, some of the reason why they couldn't play yesterday is because the Blue Coats were not available. So they couldn't call guys up. So that was that one of the key reasons why yesterday got canceled?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big portion of it. Paul Reed, Aaron Henry, and then they literally just signed Powell. So none of those guys were available to them last night. So that, and then obviously Drummond and Shake hitting the protocols yesterday. You couldn't put on a reasonably competitive basketball team, especially with Maxey, again, Embiid and Green all questionable. You didn't know if they were going to play or not. And I think last year the Sixers really got screwed in that Denver game when, it was a whole thing where Embiid and Simmons didn't get put on the injury report, blah, blah, blah. But you don't want guys to put, like, especially a guy like Embiid or Maxey and even Danny Green. Like, those guys are so important to this team. You don't want them risking injury because other guys are in protocols. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to the team over the long haul of the season. So, yeah, I mean, I'm glad that the league was maybe a little bit more proactive this time around, whereas they weren't as perhaps proactive last year in that Denver game. So it's good to see. I mean, I think the league's reaction, quite frankly, has been a little late. You know, you saw what the Bulls went through and all the guys that they had down, and the Sixers were allowed to play a game in Brooklyn when that team is just completely ravaged. That game probably should have never happened. I mean, the Sixers probably would have liked it to have never happened, but that game probably should have never happened.
Right,
considering
lost.
Yeah, considering the cases the Nets had, the Sixers should have probably never been allowed to be in their building. But yeah, I mean that's where we are, Mike. I mean, and the league. I mean, I guess I get why you don't take a break. You fear that if the guys are left to their own devices, they're going home. They're making bad decisions on their own. At least now they're in a team structure, so they're not subjecting themselves to the virus as much, and perhaps getting submitted to more testing. So yeah, I mean, there's no good answer, Mike, and I think this is like the best we can do as of right now.
Paul Hudrick, Liberty Ballers, covers the Sixers tonight against Boston here on 97.3 ESPN. Actually, no, we will not have the Sixers game tonight because we were unsure whether they were going to play, and we're going to pick up the football games instead. Because yesterday, the Sixers game was pulled at the last minute. They actually, so the league put in these rules like in the last, 48 hours to say you can go out there and sign anybody you want at this point. What are those guys' roster statuses?
So it's like a 10-day deal, basically, and it's weird. So it doesn't count to your salary cap. It doesn't count. It's a bizarre thing where it's basically like a free player for 10 days. I mean, you're paying them, but it doesn't count against your cap sheet in any way. So Tyler Johnson will be here for 10 days.
But they're making you. So in other words, if you only have 6 guys, they're saying you need to sign 2. You have to.
Yes, literally the league is making teams sign enough players to get up to code. So like, I think in certain circumstances, like you see what the Nets are going through, you can only ask a team to sign so many guys before it's not even their team. So, I mean, I think there's got to be, I don't know what the deal is as far as like discretion, as far as how deep these teams have to go in order to get compliant, in order to get to 8 guys. But I think in the Sixers case where it's like, 3 guys are out, that's reasonable enough that you can sign a player or 2 and still form a competitive basketball team. Same with the Celtics. I can't remember how many guys off the top of my head they have out, but it's enough again where you could sign a couple guys and still field the competitive NBA team. In the Nets case, you can't. It's just, especially when their 3 best players are technically, even Kyrie now, who was supposed to come back and be a part-time player, he's in the protocol. So it's just such a balancing act the NBA is going to have to do. And with these players, I mean, Tyler Johnson's going to be here. I think the Sixers, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's for every 2 guys you have in the protocol, you can sign a guy. So the Sixers technically are only eligible to sign 1 player, I guess, as of this point. But if another player gets it, or another player enters protocols, I should say, then they have a right to sign another guy. But it's going to be, it's like musical chairs, Blake. I mean, that's what it's going to be really. Probably throughout the entire winter, you would think.
Well, and then you have the situation where the season is now essentially turned into a mockery, where the seedings are going to be almost inconsequential.
Yeah, I mean, well, and then I just mentioned the Nets. Like, Kyrie Irving can't play in home games. So do the Nets even want the 1 seed? Because you can't have one of your best 3 players can't play for 4 games of the series. And if you go to a game 7, he can't play in game 7. So it's
that's
just
a great
mind-boggling to me how it's all going to work. And Mike, like to your point, the Sixers right now, how can you even judge them as a team? You can't. Like you can't. No one can sit here and tell me that they have a firm grasp on what this Sixers team is, with Ben Simmons, without Ben Simmons, with a trade, without a trade. You have no grasp on what this team is because you've had so many guys coming in and out of the lineup. When Joel Embiid is
real quick, Paul, because we only got about a minute, but you brought up with Ben Simmons, how much have we learned of what they're missing from Ben Simmons? Like, is it just like they need Ben Simmons, they're missing Ben Simmons, or you know what? They've been better than I thought without Ben Simmons. Like, when you watch this team, like they can't rebound, they're terrible at creating turnovers. Like, to me, they're missing everything he is not bringing you.
Certainly. Yeah, I would agree with that. But at the same time, I would the thing I would push against it, the last 2 games, you didn't need Ben Simmons to beat the Nets or Miami those last 2 games. You lost because you didn't show up. So, I mean, I think, certainly. Like, are they missing him from a rebounding perspective? Sure. Are they missing him from a defensive perimeter defender perspective? Absolutely. But I think they've The games they've lost, I wouldn't necessarily, maybe a game or two, I'd say, okay, if they had Ben Simmons, this game might have turned out differently. But I feel like a lot of the games they've lost, they've just lost because they haven't been good.
Well, that is obviously going to still hover over this team between now and February. What's the date? 10th? February 10th. At Paul Hudrick, follow him on Twitter. See if the Sixers do play tonight. As of now, it's on against the Celtics. He'll be back later on this week, and we'll take a look at it all. Sixers continue this season with guys you may never have heard of. Paul, take care, pal.
You as well, Mike. Stay safe.
There's Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers from Liberty Ballers, and you can check him out over at libertyballers.com. He's brought to you today by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. All right, that'll do it for us today. We're going to take you out to, is it in Vegas, the game? Vegas, Cleveland. We're going to Cleveland. That's right, they're going to Cleveland. We'll be in Cleveland, Monday Night Football doubleheader right here on 97.3 ESPN. As we mapped out earlier, this game here, multiple movements in the AFC wildcard and playoff race. If Cleveland wins, they will be ahead in the North. We got that for you. And then Minnesota, Chicago tonight. We'll all be back tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody.